Alright lads, we're back again. We're back into it. We had a video yesterday. Sort of 3 random things that your father should have taught you. I think it's relevant. I think it's relevant to a lot of the shit that's happening in Australia, relevant to a lot of the stuff that's happening in the States. So I find it's an interesting bunch of topics. I hope that you took note. And that there are 3 things that you should focus on. Reputation. The other one that was that travel doesn't really matter unless you're successful. Travel doesn't really matter unless it's for content or for business. Travel's just a tool to make more money, generate more fun, get more attention. So, and then the third was investing in yourself. And it wasn't through spending money on lavish courses and buying a bunch of bullshit, spending a bunch of money. It was, for the most part, investing in yourself based on quality food, gym, taking care of your body, your mind, investing on your mind, exactly what you put into it. A lot of you put a lot of negative garbage in there. You're consuming a lot of fucking either violent content, but also just drama and bullshit. And then you wonder why your own life sucks. It's very much garbage in, garbage out for your brain. The things that you consume into it, it makes it into your reality. Obviously, a lot of you are not ready to really understand that. I fucking obviously understand that. That's how I'm worth 8 figures. I've come to terms with understanding that sort of thing's massively fucking important. A lot of guys will watch some bullshit like The Secret, and they think that if they just sit around and fucking visualize things, that things are going to happen. No. God gives those who fucking you can pray and pray and pray, but if you don't actually act on it, it doesn't fucking nothing happens. But the guy who actually is essentially praying, but he's visualizing what he's going to have later on, and then he fucking ends up with it because he works hard to get it. God essentially helps those that help themselves. The wretched one who just sits around and fucking begs and prays, and he's sitting on the side of the road begging for money. That's not the one that really gets anything. It's the one who fucking pushes forward and actually does shit until something sticks and then becomes very successful. When I've relocated now, I'm out of the hotel, so I'm in an apartment in Warsaw. It's a beautiful city here. I have the backdrop with me, otherwise the fucking background's washed out, but this is my view. It's the Palace of Culture. Beautiful fucking view. It's a good spot. It's a nice spot here. It's a good life, it's very different to a lot of other fucking countries. There's a lot less bullshit here. The people are fucking more respectable and more respectful. There's a lot less fucking bullshit crime. A lot of the issues are around the UK or the US or Australia now. They've wiped out all the gang leaders, the police, and that's deliberate. They've taken out all the leadership guys, and now it's just a free-for-all. Instead of the old days where you used to have a mafia ran the whole fucking city, but they also kept the criminals in line. You couldn't run around stealing handbags and stabbing people and doing a bunch of shit. Even that, you do that here now, and you'll just be buried 10 kilometers out in snow. No one will ever fucking find you. The crime, things are more organized. It's not the peasant running around doing a bunch of bullshit, the junkie crimes in the UK and things like that. That doesn't happen here. The idea that people would walk around and get their bags snatched, that really wouldn't happen. And if it did, that person would go missing. They'd be gone. So that's what the police have done in Australia and things like that. They've taken away a lot of the leaders. The leadership roles have either been obliterated or fucking locked up or had to leave. And fucking I have friends living in countries around, obviously I can't say, but countries around the world where they've essentially had to sort of leave that lifestyle because the police are fucking won't leave them alone. Now all that sort of thing's done is just create a power vacuum and a lot of other fucking little bullshit crime. The guy who runs around and does a bunch of bullshit on the street and actually hurts civilians. It's now the police's role to take care of him, whereas it used to be guys would pretty much run certain towns and certain cities, and then they would ensure that no little bullshit crime happened on their watch. The crime should always be about the civilians don't really get targeted. They don't really even notice that crime exists. That's the way that it should be. They don't know it exists unless they try to interfere. If they try to get involved, then obviously they realise that an area is owned by a specific person or a specific group, and they can't just fucking jump in. But that's the way that it should be, because then the civilian, like the average guy, the mum walking around with her kids, she's safe. Like, she doesn't have anything to fear. Because if someone attacks her, her bigger guy just attacks him. You know, that's the way that it should be. But the police and that have wiped out a lot of the leadership, and now, yeah, it's created a power vacuum, but it's also created, like, you know, instead of like one or two like leaders like fucking having a big say in certain areas, now there's like hundreds of little fucking like shit kickers bowling around, and no one really monitors them. Like, no one can really control them. The police don't seem to give a fuck. But that's like done intentionally. You know, it's done so that then it just splinters out and creates a ton of like fucking crime. It's like in Iraq, like where they took Saddam out. And I have a lot of fucking like Iraqi friends where they would say that under Saddam's leadership, like there wasn't fucking like drugs and shit running around. Like, people weren't just like smacked up and taking a bunch of drugs. Like, if you were involved in that specific trade back then, like he would just fucking like get rid of you. Like, you couldn't just run around selling drugs to like the fucking population. Whereas now, there's a massive fucking drug problem there because they wiped out that specific leader. And when they do that, it can create even more problems. Because, you know, sometimes it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. You know, the thing with power too, like, if you're born into power, like, you're always been a powerful person. It's still like you're still corrupted and you're still a corrupted person, but you've always been in control. So you're used to it. It's not like you've built up a fucking, like, the problem that happens in Australia and things like that, you have people that were bullied in school because they had no power, and now they get like a powerful position or a leadership position or something like that, and they have a lot of like fucking like hatred in their heart and a lot of like people that they have to prove things to and things like that. That's why like kings and things work so well, because the king or like the prince or whatever, he's always known power. Like, his whole fucking life, even from like 1 year old, you know, he's had like servants and things like that doing things for him. So he doesn't have like that like fucking like track record of build up of like bad experiences that now he has to punish people over. So that's why. And it's the same with like certain mafia and things like that. I'm not going to get into specific fucking groups, but a lot of the guys in that specific area, they're born into families where they are fucking extremely powerful, and they always have been. They know who they are. They don't have shit to prove. Like, if you don't even get involved in their business, you will never even like really have a fucking issue with them. Like, a lot of it, you barely would even know they exist unless you try to like make a run in that specific industry. But what they've done here in Australia and even like in the States and that, they wipe out a lot of the leaders again. So the leader and the older people and the mentors and things like that, they're not running, like, they're not really like have a say in what happens anymore. Because a lot of times too, like if you're in a group or something, they get hit with a lot of control orders even if they're out of prison. So you can't fucking like even have anything to do with that specific group. Like, just to interact with them, it's like you can go back to prison. So then it's hard for them to have like any control over like even their own people. So it can become like, instead of like one head, it can become like fucking hundreds, like a hydra. You know, they chop the one big head off and then just like 100 little fucking ones come out. And then they're all like people who have never had power themselves and never like really been in control or in charge. So now they just fucking like just do bad shit or like terrorize people or like take it out on civilians and that, because they don't have like the self-control. They haven't really been groomed into that position. A lot of people in those sort of lifestyles, like even here and things like that, it's like you're really born into it. You know, it's like your dad was in that and he's groomed you to be in that position. In Australia, a lot of guys think that they can just fly into it, like pretty much off the street. And then they're like run into problems. Like, it's not really something that you should just fucking like think that you can just fly into. You know, it's a position that you really have to be groomed into. You have to really be somebody, otherwise you just end up like going through the grinder. You know, the grinder of like getting shit tasks that just pretty much send you straight to jail and you don't actually make money. So that's a fucked up thing. And another fucked up thing that happens in Australia, it happens in the States as well, is that so now imagine that you've been to prison, like you've gone to prison for fucking like an issue or something like that. And now, like, you've been in that sort of lifestyle before, you're successful, but you're out of prison now. Maybe you're on parole or something like that, or you're on some sort of control order. They slap you on a firearms control order so that you can't hold like a fucking handgun. And of course you can't hold one anyway without a license, but they put like a firearm control order on, which also means that like if you get caught with one, it's more serious. It's like more serious and you go straight to prison. So it's hard to like I understand why a lot of the guys there, like if you've got like bad blood with someone or like you're trying to leave that sort of lifestyle, it's very difficult because you can't even really defend yourself. Like it's hard because if you want to like carry, like, you know, you want to like at least have the strap like fucking in like nearby or something like that to be able to sort of protect yourself or like protect your family and things like that. Because if you've been in that sort of lifestyle before, like it's difficult to leave. But now when you're on all these control orders or the police just, they still search you and they still like fucking harass you and they'll still come around and try and find shit. And then it's hard to like have like weapons in your house to defend yourself if someone like tries to come in or something happens. And also another hard thing is like if you have a confrontation on the street, if you're on parole or you've been to prison or something like that before, the person who confronts you has really nothing to lose. Because if you're on parole, even if you fight back, you're going straight to jail. And it's not even that you're going to jail for a short time. Like, you know, if some of these guys got like 5 or 6 years parole, just to like fight back, if someone like throws a punch at them on the street, they can get done with a fray. But then like the way that the police fuck you is that they parole breach you straight up. So parole's breached you. It doesn't mean like there's no court. Like, you know, it's not a debate. You go straight to jail at the very fucking moment, like your parole's just pulled. And then they have the affray charge or whatever is just like pending in the background, or maybe assault or something like that, still floating in the background. So it means that you've still got outstanding court. So they won't like bail you on that charge, like, because you've breached parole, but like they'll make it drag through court. Like I know that a lot of the ways that they were fucking people over in Queensland was like they'd catch people with drugs apparently, say they've got them with drugs or whatever, and the person would be like, oh, I want to get the drugs tested. You know, like I don't think that, like maybe that guy got done with like 3 kilos of coke or something, and he's like, yeah, but like, you know, 1 kilo or something, and that's just shit. You know, like it's just some fucking like creatine or like glutamine or like caffeine mixture or like synthetics or something that's not going to pop up. So they try and like get it down so it's less actual weight. But then the police will turn around and be like, oh, our labs are backed up like 18 months. So if you want to contest it and like, but you have to now wait, like you have to wait, and a lot of the time they're waiting in prison. So then if they want to fucking like fight the weight charge, like they have to pretty much do as much time as they probably would have still got more time than that, but like it fucks their whole court up. And they're like paying a lawyer and all that for that whole time. And a lot of guys, when they get done, they don't really have money aside. They're not like really like thinking long term. In Australia, often like they don't look after each other. Like someone will get done and like people won't even help with his legal. Like his own fucking like team will just like pretty much leave him out to dry. And then a lot of guys will like to be trying to fuck the guy's girl and shit. It's very fucking like dumb there. But yeah, so what happens, the police put you on like a firearm control order or some sort of like order that says that you can't like pretty much like defend yourself. And they're always fucking searching your house and searching your driving and things like that. So it's very hard to defend yourself. And if someone confronts you or wants to get you to breach parole, it's not hard. Like two dudes can just confront you on the street and start a fight and you get arrested. Like you're the one that's parole gets pulled, and maybe they have no history, so they just get like a slap on the wrist essentially, like a fray. If you've got no parole, it's not really a big charge. You know, it's a very minor charge. So that's sort of one way that you can get fucked. You know, it makes it very hard to fucking like defend yourself, because obviously if you've been in that lifestyle, you don't want the police around. Like you don't want to fucking like be relying on the police to defend you or some crap. But that's the thing when they take people's guns away. Like anyone can still get them. Like it's still very fucking easy to get a firearm, pretty much anywhere, but Australia is no different. But what happens when you're on all these control orders, it's difficult to like fucking, because you get arrested, like you get done with one and you're fucked, you know, so it's very fucking dumb like that. It's very hard to like fucking, yeah, essentially defend yourself and your family. Like, so then again, like I said, instead of like 1 or 2 dudes like running the fucking whole like area, there's now like hundreds or 1,000 like little minnows doing a bunch of bullshit. So no one really feels like that's secure. You know, and then the guys, it's difficult to defend yourself if you have a criminal history, extensive one, because anything you do, you're going back to prison. And then if you've got family on the outside, like you have to fucking think about that. Like if you go to prison, you still have to be able to look after them. And that's difficult because your whole crew can end up in prison with you. Because often when one person gets busted, the whole fucking like group's pretty much under investigation. So they often get busted together. Like I have friends now that, and some of the sentences people are getting slapped with are fucking enormous. You know, I have friends a very good friend that's still doing like 14 years for drug trafficking. He's still got 14 years left. He'll be deported as soon as the day that he gets out. be deported back to Asia. I'm not saying which specific area, but yeah, so it's very fucking like difficult there. The charges and shit, like some of the punishments are hectic, but the punishments go well and truly beyond prison. Like it's essentially punishes you for your whole life. You know, like just because someone's been to jail or something like that and they're in that specific lifestyle, like the criminals or anyone can still get handguns. Like it should be that either no one can get them, like they're completely banned, like, and that means that like the fucking shit's actually enforced, like at the harbours and shit, like it's they're making it difficult to actually get in, or everyone should have them. And I'm more of a believer that everyone should have one. I think that like assault rifles and like, you know, like AR-15s or like M4s or AKs or like machine guns or something like that, even submachine guns, I don't think that anyone should be able to really have those except for like, you know, the military. I don't even think that the police should really have those, because unless they're like CERT or something fucking serious, I don't think they should have those either, unless they're very well trained. But I think that, yeah, like handguns in general, like maybe up to like a 9mm, I think that, yeah, the majority of people should be able to get. I think that if you're like reckless with one, there should be massive penalties and you should have to do training and things like that, definitely. I don't think that you should just get one, like you should just be able to buy one over the counter. I think like if you do like a course or something, that you should be able to get one. That's what I believe. Because if you want to kill someone, I mean, it doesn't really matter, like a handgun or not, you're still going to be able to do it. And it also, yeah, it protects you essentially from the government, which is what's coming. That's why they cut the heads off these like fucking like big fish, because they got too powerful. But it's not just that they're powerful, they want the chaos. See, they want chaos because then they can fucking like reinstate or instate a lot more of these like restrictions. A lot of the laws they pass, they claim are just to stop the bikies, but they use them against civilians. They paint them as the boogeyman, and the average Joe's like, fuck, I need to be terrified. And then they like pass more and more fucking laws, specifically like surveillance laws and like laws around like extreme penalties for certain people, like extreme prison time, which is bullshit. But yeah, I got a lot of questions on women. I think that that's a good spot to start. Let's start here. If women didn't want you before you got wealthy and now you have money they want you, would you consider those girls gold diggers? Not necessarily gold diggers. I wouldn't say that. Women are attracted to winners. Like that's just the way that it goes. Like women in general, I can't blame them for fucking like seeing someone win and then being like, oh, now I'm attracted to that guy. I don't know if it's specifically solely the money. Money is just value. You know, like money is just a way to keep track, like of who's won. You know, a lot of guys are intimidated by money because that's what it is. Like, you know, it's the perfect display of value. You know, if someone's time's worth $1,000 an hour and another guy's time's worth $10 an hour, I mean, it's obvious who's more valuable. You know, if one guy's worth like $10 million and the other's worth like $10, I mean, it's the only guy who turns around and says like one is valued the same as the other is like the fucking cope bot. Like he's just trying to like fucking cope. You know, money or like net worth or something. It's essentially your value. You know, but there are other things. You know, like just because someone has a lot of money doesn't mean that they're going to get a lot of girls unless they pay for them. And that's like pretty sad. I mean, I've been a broke boy, fucking couldn't even pay for dates, and I would still have girls. You know, it doesn't mean that like just because you got a lot of money that you're just gonna have a lot of girls. I know a lot of crypto guys that have many millions. Like I know guys that have Lamborghinis, Ferraris and shit, and all they can get are girls that sit in their car and take photos and then like don't even fuck them. Like they just take girls to like Nobu and all these like 5-star restaurants and shit, and the girl just takes photos without them and like flexes, and then the guy like can't even really get a kiss at the end. You know, it doesn't mean that like you're still going to get a lot of pussy. But no, if a girl never helped me make it, like if a girl's never really like supported me or like fucking like, you know, helped me get to where I am, it's hard for me to like see a lot of value in it. It's hard for me to be like, you know, like, I don't know, this girl shit. Like, you know, I have to be a bit skeptical of her intentions that she showed up. The way that I am, like if someone ever does something for me, like you'll see, like if there's people that have interacted with me, like people that have helped me out or like fucking done something for me or like, you know, done like a favor or like put their neck out for me, I never forget. That's the thing about me that's like a fucking strong point of mine. I'll always like fucking essentially break my back for people that have helped me. You know, I always, like, if someone goes above and beyond, I always tip them. I'll always give them money. I'll always give them praise. I give people praise publicly. I'm not one of those guys that lives in massive scarcity. You know, I don't try to put people in a bad deal. If they put their neck out for me, I'll never forget it. I have a friend of mine, like, sitting in prison, and as soon as he gets out, I'll give him, like, fucking, I don't know, probably like 6 figures, because we're like a team. You know, it's just the way that it goes. Like, you can't fucking forget people that, like, you know, essentially were like brothers. It doesn't, time doesn't diminish that. You know, just because someone's like fucking not done shit for you lately, that doesn't mean that some of the shit that they've done isn't like monumental in your success. So that's the big thing for me. Like, I know that with women and stuff like that, the value exchange can be difficult when you're like an extremely valuable person. It's hard to get like a lot out of women, like even if they do shit like clean up or do that sort of crap. It's nice, and you know, it helps you out and things like that, but it's not like the fucking, you know, it's not worth probably as much as my time is. But it is nice. Like, I've got a girl here, and I've got like a beautiful girl, and she's fucking like, you know, very, very helpful, and she's very like feminine, sweet, very intelligent. And I was sick the other day. I had like a fucking like stomach thing. I had this massive stomach cramps and all the fucking stuff that goes along with that. And then she's like doing shit, you know, like she like disappears, comes back, she's making soup, like some like Ukrainian soup that she made. And it genuinely helped me, you know, like, and she's like getting these pills, like prescription shit that's like fucking some sort of painkillers for your stomach. And she's like doing all this stuff, and it does help out. You know, obviously I can handle it on my own. I can like get by it on my own, but it's nice to have someone that cares about you, you know. That's beyond money. You know, like, it's different when people like, you know, I could always have a cook here. I could have like a fucking, essentially like a maid that does everything 24 hours a day. It wouldn't like really break my bank at all. I wouldn't probably notice it. But it's different when people make things because they love you. Like, it's different when people do things because they care about you. You know, like, you go down, even if you go to the restaurant or something like that, and they go above and beyond because they actually like you. That's shit that's beyond money. You know, it's different when, like, you know, you have an interaction with someone and you can tell that they respect you. You know, it's different, like, you look to the side and you've got a girl and she, like, just fucking, like, gazes at you and she's staring at you and you're like, this girl, like, really fucking cares about me, and it's obvious. You know, it's different again when you have someone, Leo, that you're just paying the money, or, like, they're only with you because they're getting things, or they're, like, gaining status or something like that by being around you. That's different. Like, you know, and a lot of guys are switched off from that. They'll say that stuff doesn't matter because, you know, if you still get laid, theoretically, it doesn't, like, to them, they don't notice the difference. But respect and things like that, they're very important to me. Like, yeah, again, I was saying the same thing. Like, if someone does something for me, or yeah, I'll never forget. Like, I'll never fucking, like, yeah, I think that's been a strong point for me. You know, it's obviously been it was like a calibration thing where I used to do, like, put my neck out for people that didn't deserve it. Like, especially, like, I don't know, back when I was younger, it was like a calibration thing where I had to realize who's, like, worth that sort of behavior and who's not. I think that's a thing that guys go through. Sometimes they do put their neck out, or, like, they trust someone that burns them, and then they, like, get really fucking, like, hardened after that and really cold. And then, but that's like, yeah, that's more happened out of scarcity. Like, it's been forced. It's not who they are. And I understand that. Like, I had to go through that sort of stage myself. But it's not living a full life, you know. How do you get women to be extremely obsessed with you? To me, to get women to be extremely obsessed with you, I'm not going to say that I'm some fucking, like, playboy that has, like, fucking 1 million women that I can walk out and just love me. I'm only like a specific woman likes me. But if a woman likes me, it's very hard to find someone like me. Like, I'm a pretty fucking unique person. So I know that for me to get a girl obsessed, you have to be different. To get a girl obsessed with you, you can't be exactly like everyone else, because you have to be difficult to replace. So if the girl's really into you, if she loses you, it's very hard to find another you. That's important. To me, that's very important. You know, I'm not the guy running around with a shotgun just shooting like fucking buckshot, trying to hit like a room full of girls. I'm more of like trying to have the rifle out and just go for like one specific girl. But I want her to be like absolutely obsessed with me, where I'm like her fucking world. So that's more of a thing to me. I'd rather have that than have like 20 girls where they can kind of like take it or leave it. Like, they'll fuck you, yeah, but like the next day they're not like really like messaging you a lot. I like a girl where it's very obvious that she's obsessed. You know, she's messaging me all the time. She's telling me like all the time that she like loves me or like cares about me and things like that. That's important to me. Like I don't like these real shallow fucking like, you know, he who cares less wins sort of like American relationships. You know, where both are too scared to show their cards, so they both pretend they don't care. And then the relationship or whatever, they like little sex session falls apart. And then they're like pretty much onto the next one. That's bullshit to me. Like that's a waste of time. Because I'm building equity. Like I'm wasting my time with that sort of shit. Like that's fuckboy stuff. Like if all a guy can get out of a girl is like pussy, like sex, that's pretty fucking low. Like that's crap. Like I can just go to the club any night and get like probably 2 girls. Like 2 like 7 out of 10s the same night, you know, so that's like very fucking like easy. That's quite low value. Sex for the sake of sex is like, it's like, you know, just chasing pleasure. It's not like building anything long term, and it's not really teaching you how to be like a partner. It's not teaching you how to be like anything other than a fuckboy. And I know a lot of the fuckboy stuff, like it feels good and like it's toxic and all this temporary shit and it's like a rush. But a lot of it is just distractions because the guys have nothing else going on. It's like validation seeking behavior. They're using like getting girls, they like get their notch count up and think it's impressive. But a lot of these girls will fuck like 100 dudes. Like by the time they're like 27, like 26, 27 now, like these Western girls probably fucking like 100 guys. So you're like essentially just one notch on her list too. That's not impressive. And a lot of the girls these guys are fucking are just low value. It's a waste of time to me. What would you say is the best start to increasing wealth? That's a good question. The best beginning to increasing your wealth is probably going to be increasing your income. And that means, I know that for some of you, like you're going to be on like 20 or 30K a year. Maybe some of you like working at like KFC or like McDonald's, which I've fucking done. Well, I've gone through the trenches there, Hungry Jack's to McDonald's to all that sort of bullshit. I've gone through all that crap. So some of you it's just going to be like signaling that you want more responsibility, which comes with more money. Like I see a lot of the stuff here, like I'll see the retail staff and they want to do the minimum amount of work they can. Like a lot of the stuff, like I was looking at just at the grocery store the other day and then I'm like watching the staff, like they won't even bag my food for me. They're like trying to do the absolute least amount of work, but they don't understand that that makes them extremely replaceable. They're like being essentially like lulled into a false sense of security because they're making work even like the like guy who buys shit, he's used to bagging his own food. So then when it goes to fully automation, that's not a big change because he's already been bagging his own shit. So the retail wage is just like lazily decreasing their responsibility but making it easier for automation to replace them. So that's a strategy from like the fucking big boss. He knows that the lazier he can make people, it makes the like guy who's buying shit do more work. And then he essentially like offloads that work to the other person because then he'll automate it. And once they buy the original machine, like it'll be a big outlay at first, but then after like 6 months, they'll have made all their money back and then some. And the wagee won't have a fucking job. Automation in general is going to wipe out a lot of fucking like careers. Automation and then eventually artificial intelligence will wipe out like another lot of people. But it'll also create a lot of fucking like jobs as well. I mean, automation, robotics, and AI, there'll be 3 very big things. There'll be 3 very big industries that there'll be a lot of fucking like millionaires made. When AI like eventually kicks off specifically, I mean, automation will be a big thing too, but AI will be massive because it's very speculative. Not many people understand it, but it's a tech product as well. That'll be where the next crypto is. Like that'll be a lot of fucking like lucrative money will be made. The money will be made next in the metaverse, like metaverse players. I know a lot of fucking like noobs think that Meta's dead. Like, you know, they got Zuckerberg and all that crap, like essentially got massive problems at Facebook. And they've had layoffs and things like that, which actually isn't bad. Laying off staff is bullish. Like, you know, that's less costs, like less overheads. A lot of the staff that they had would just be like fucking people working from home doing fuck all. So when they lay staff off like that, it's actually a good sign. Because then when the market, like when things pick up again, they've got less people to pay. They've like used this fucking bear market to offload all their shitty stuff. So that's a smart tactic. That's like shit that I advise companies to do. If a company comes to me and says like we're like fucking having issues here, like we're having issues with any sort of payments, I'd tell them to use that as a time to dump their fucking like worst staff and like dump the staff that do fucking nothing. because a lot of staff like were high on the hog because they were in like a bull market. The market was incredibly strong, but not only that, like they could call their wage, like that they were almost like short staffed after COVID and things like that. So the wagey was fucking like high on the hog, and now the wagey's crushed. He's been crushed back to reality, and that has to happen. So if we're building back to the fucking thing, it's going to be increasing your wage, increasing your income, increasing your like high income skill. Maybe you're just flipping burgers, but you need to learn something else as well. Some of you need to signal, more responsibility, signal for management. And it's more responsibility, yes, but with responsibility comes like you're harder to replace. And they'll also introduce you to things that like concepts and things like that make you money. They get introduced to like leadership, and they talk about different things. They talk about different things than the average fucking wagey. The average wagey just talks about like the weekend and fucking like how little they can do and like how they can get away and like do less work. That's like a cancerous mindset. Because a lot of people are lazy, but they're also like fucking scared of taking on responsibility. The funniest thing, like I had the same thing when I was in the army. It was very much like a soldier thing to just like, you just wanted to go home. You didn't want more fucking shit to do when you got home. But then I used to have friends that were like corporals and another one that was a sergeant. And I realized that they don't do a lot more than I was doing, but they were getting paid like 50% or like 100% more than me. And not only that, they were harder to replace, and they were also like more a status position. And when they eventually leave the job, if you're a sergeant or something, like you've got more opportunities, you get more respect. So it's not that they were doing a lot more work, they're just smarter about it. And I think it's a bit of a psyop, like they pass around that you don't want like any sort of leadership. I think it's the leadership themselves that do that. It's like the government, like and rich people as well. Rich people will tell you that it's hard to be rich, and it's not. Like it's such a fucking clear psyop. Like it's so obvious that like money is important. Like and money makes everything easier. If you've got like any sort of fucking problems or like any issues, like money can get you out of most things. Like money will get you out of fucking like most legal problems. Like if not get you out of it, it'll like soften the blow. The broke guy who goes and gets legal aid, he's gonna get fucked. The guy who's got like millions of dollars and gets the best lawyer in the town, like he's gonna get a much better outcome. It's going to be sculpted in a better way. It's going to be presented to the court much better. And if you get sick or like your mum's sick or something happens, like you can help out. If you've got no money and you're completely relying on the public system, like you've got no say. Like if you've got some fucking like need shoulder surgery or something, they can send you to anyone and fucking botch it and have like problems. I had a medical thing that I had to get last year, and I went to the second best surgeon in the world for it. And it was not cheap, and I had to go there twice. It's not fucking cheap, but like it makes a massive difference. Like you've only got one body, and when they start doing like surgery on you or whatever, it's like things can go wrong. They can fix one thing and then something else breaks. So you need the best fucking like best one that you can get. Money does all that. Like you go to better places, you eat better food, your life expectancy, I would imagine, it's going to be longer. Like it's the stress itself can hurt you, but once you're very wealthy too, you can almost insulate yourself from the stress and have like a fucking like just a circular like momentum of fucking like success. You can hire a lot of people to do a lot of the shit, and you can pretty much just sit back if you really want. So yeah, you can get insulated from the stress. You can get massages, best gym, best trainers and things like that, best food, fucking. So you can watch all that stuff. All that stuff matters. Like even if it only gives you like an extra 5% or something like that, that all adds up. Then the average guy who can't really do any of that, like he doesn't have the free time either to like do shit. Like I can just take days off whenever I want. And do anything, like get on the podcast and do this sort of shit whenever I want. When I feel like doing it, I just jump on. I don't have to like sit there and like be like, sir, can I fucking like duck away for 2 hours and do a podcast? No, I do what the fuck I want. And that's important. It keeps you like you've got a clean mind, like a clear mind. And some people work so hard, they like, not even work hard, but like they're too busy with other people's fucking shit that they like miss out on opportunities. You have to have like, you have to be able to eventually call your own schedule. And that's comes again through taking on like management, leadership, things like that, because eventually you can be the boss and you can start your own gig, or you can be in a leadership role where you can kind of like manage your own time. That's very important. So yeah, the first step to increasing wealth is going to be increasing your wage, but then increasing like your wealth financially is that, and then you want to like start to increase like your high income skills, the best thing, increase your wage, but then you want to increase like your like standard of fucking life. Some of you like it's focused on money, but then you're fat. You know, you've got to really be able to do it all. You want to move in the positive direction for everything. You know, that's my take on that. Where do you see central bank digital currencies taking us? So where do I see CBDCs taking us? I do think that they're inevitable. I think that they're the next progression in money though. Like a lot of guys are fucking like terrified of them, but they don't understand like if you try to do anything in the West, like even launder money, like actually like do it, it's not very fucking easy. Like it's very difficult if you've got like millions of dollars in cash to like hide it. Because the police have like cash sniffing dogs and things like that. It's very difficult. Like, you know, it's what you're going to bury money. You can only bury it for so long. And it fucking like starts to fuck up. Even the plastic notes, like, and people can steal them. You know, people can dig them up while you're away and fuck you over. The dogs can find them and fucking like fuck you as well. So central bank digital currencies is not really that different. Like, it's not really that different from how things are now. All that'll happen is they can put like a time decay on your money so that you have to spend like X amount, like you have to consume, you know, you can't just like save. They can set it so like your money will decay like 1% every year or something unless you're like fucking doing certain things. And they can also enforce like social things on you. Like if you fuck around, they can like take your money and fuck around with it. It essentially moves things from like the bank to the Fed. So I have a idea and a concept that I'm sort of running with at the moment and still like analysing and things like that, that eventually the Fed will like eat the banks. That's what I think is happening now. Like with central bank digital currencies, a lot of the banking is not really needed. You know, like the concept that the Fed itself can eat the bank and still run like they manage like people's accounts. You know, and then they're like CBDCs in a wallet that they run. So the idea of a bank account and a bank's not really needed. But I wonder if the Fed itself or like the fucking US government or whatever will eat the bank, or if the bank and that will just merge together into like some hybrid. I think that banks are probably going to stay around because they're essentially the fall guy for the government. You know, people don't really understand that. The banks and the government have been in bed bailing each other out and shit so long, but the banks itself, like they can let some go bust and things like that, and it's just another branch for people like the normie to be angry at. You know, they're angry at the bank, but really they should be angry at the government. So I think that, yeah, as much as I think that they will be eaten, I think that they're needed to be there so that the average guy is still angry at banks when really it's the government that's been doing all that shit for such a long time. Like the bankers are just essentially like work for the government. What stocks are you looking into now for the long term? Stocks now, I really don't like stocks at the moment. I think that we're looking at like a Q4 capitulation still. You know, I know that it's nearly the end of Q4, so that might push into early Q1, which I've also had thought. I think that I would be looking at, again, like tech stocks. But looking at tech stocks early next year. I know a lot of guys think that the tech boom's over and now like suddenly all these companies are worthless and things like that. That's bullshit. Like, you know, it's very obvious to me that tech's like the future. Like, you know, it's not like we're going to be less. Like technology is just going away. You know, it's just going to be much more of the same. Like the tech valuations I think are inflated, but like if they're valued into the future, they're probably not. Like, you know, Tesla, the thing with Tesla that I don't like is it's very reliant on one man. Like, you know, if Musk dies tomorrow, he's like the face of fucking Tesla. You know, a lot of the stuff pretty much rests in his mind. I think Tesla, a lot of the fucking ideas that they have are like bullshit. I think that a lot of the stuff that they have is kind of like just concepts. You know, like this Tesla AI and stuff like that. I really doubt that Musk will really be alive by the time AI's gotten like traction. I know a lot of guys sit around and like watch these like AI drawings and shit and they think that it's like true AI. It's not. It's fucking like, you know, singularity or whatever. It's going to be very arguable if that's actually happened. But I do think that that's inevitable. You know, it's AI itself is going to be a massive industry. But yeah, I think that we're just not there yet. You know, and I don't think that I think Tesla's ideas, kind of like the original Tesla, will be carried on by like maybe his son or someone else that's like actually in the time where they can actually, the technology is with the mind where they can actually like make his ideas happen in the real world. See, Musk and that has these ideas, but a lot of them are just ideas. You know, like this Neuralink and all this crap, and they show like a pig and all this shit doing stuff. A lot of that can be extremely manipulated. You know, whereas the average normie watches it and pretty much thinks like that they could just put it in a person tomorrow. They couldn't. The person would fucking probably die. or like it would just be a complete failure. You know, it's very different, like to the concept that you can just put shit in people's like brains or people's heads. Like that's a long way away from being like happening outside of somewhere like maybe China, where they can pretty much like take prisoners out of the prison and just do whatever the fuck they want to them. The idea of like people volunteering to get like this like technology put into their actual like body, that's a long way away from fucking like being a thing. Like, you know, people underestimate like, or yeah, just how long that sort of shit takes. Like that sort of stuff is very far out. Like a lot of the guys will watch like Charles Schwab and all this stuff, and they act like the shit that they're talking about like is going to happen tomorrow. That shit's very far away. You know, like the idea of putting things into people like implants, that's inevitable, but it's very far down the track. The reason why it is inevitable, and it's also like the fucking like future of man, is because like why wouldn't it be? Like if the technology's there, who actually like wouldn't do it? Like if someone's got like, imagine that you want to have kids or something like that, and then they have like the fucking like gene editing or whatever, but you're a rich guy and you can gene edit your own kids so that they don't get sick. They're like superior intelligence, beauty, fucking like everything is just like maxed out because they can edit the fucking like cell, the fucking like, and make it perfect. So then the kid doesn't have to worry about cancers and all this other shit. And then the average pleb can't do that. And then they put these like superior fucking beings that are still human, but they're like edited to the shithouse. And then they've got him against like just an average guy. Like the performance is going to be completely different. One will become a slave to the other. Like I'm pretty sure if I would think about it, it's probably like not far off happening now. Like they're at least be trialing it on mass, probably through China though, because a lot of that stuff is like very regulated. You can't just do shit like that, like without, you know, consequences. A lot of the stuff, like if you're an elite person, you don't want to like have your kids go through all that crap unless it's very tested, because you know there'll be massive problems. So I imagine they're testing a lot of prisoners and shit in China, and then they'll probably run it through the elites. But yeah, if you've got access to gene editing and like access to like, you know, that sort of technology where you can like merge with some sort of like robotics or something like that, I'm sure that's just inevitable. Like that's the thing that the elites will do. Like if you can, your dad's fucking like 80 years old and has a heart attack, but he's like a billionaire, and then they turn around and be like, yeah, we can put like a robotic heart in there so that he lives to like 150 and other organs and that, as if he's not going to take it, and as if anyone else wouldn't take it if they're in exactly the same fucking shoes. So yeah, it's just, that's the reason why you have to succeed. Like you have to get wealthy. The thing that I see now, it's like a land grab. Like everyone knows that the world's essentially like fucked, and it's just going to be like the have-nots and the fucking like essentially have-yots. You know, it's you think that you're a slave class now, but like gene editing and all these sort of things don't exist. Like maybe they're like being like tested or whatever, but they don't really exist yet en masse. And once you realize like that you see beings that are superior to you walking around, they're still human, but they are like fucking above and beyond you. Like you got your kids, it's like you can't give them the shit that they've taken. And they're actually like superior in every way. Like their intelligence is off the charts, but also every other fucking like attribute's massive, like their strength and everything. It's just like they fucking learn twice as fast as your kid, and they can do just shit that your kid can't do. Then you'll realize like that slave, that's what's coming. You know, and then they'll be able to like extend their own life and a bunch of other shit, and they'll eventually be able to like engineer diseases and shit like that for the pleb class to suffer, while the elite class can fucking like get around them with like gene editing and other shit. So it's pretty obvious like where shit's gonna go, and it's obvious that the average person like doesn't really fucking think about like where their kids are gonna be born into. You know, it's part of what I think about. Like I know that it's pretty much like I know that I'm the last like fucking generation of like before the whole world's going to change, and that's the same thing for a lot of us. Like we're in the technical age where like before like the metaverse and AI and all that sort of stuff happens, I imagine that's like the metaverse, you know, it's very conceptual now. It's still probably like 10 years away or something like that, or 20 years away. But AI itself is probably like from actually being any sort of like fucking shit that they can do a lot of things with is still probably like 20 or 30 years away or more. You know, and that's just from like quite basic or like intermediate AI. I imagine that once they have like AI and machines that can create like other machines, that'll be very interesting. You know, they can essentially do unlimited things like nanotechnology and things like that's Going to be pretty extreme. But yeah, it's going to be very easy to control the slave class after that. I mean, people think that they're controlled now. There's no like fucking like really like VR and things like that that's like en masse. Wait until that sort of shit exists. You're going to be like a battery. You'll see people like pretty much fucking sitting in the corner with the goggles on, like they are VR goggles, and that'll be their whole world. And they'll live in squalor. But they'll be like, it's like a massive dopamine thrill, you know, but their life, as soon as they take the goggles off, will be fucking terrible. And their suffering will be massive. So then they'll just think how they can put them on as long as possible. And the corpos will let you wear them a lot of the time because they'll fucking like essentially just use you as a battery and program you non-stop through the fucking like goggles. And you'll just be out of the way. And that's the way that it's a perfect system. And they'll program the sheep through that. And it'll be fucking very intensive programming to just stay out of the way while they just level up. And the sheep all just fucking have kids and like live in that sort of world. I said it like probably 2 years ago. The real world will be for the rich, and the fucking plebs will live in VR. Real food will be for the rich, and the plebs will be eating all the fake crap. Travel and that, like in the future, that'll be for the rich, and the plebs will travel through VR. I've already said all that shit. It's fucking inevitable. I've got like a fucking like, I don't know, it's almost like an intuition for the future. You know, I've got like a fucking, to a degree, I think that I've got like a sixth sense to shit that's about to happen, you know, and it's made me a lot of money. Like I've made a lot of money in crypto, I've made a lot of money in fucking like fields, I've made a lot of money like selling drugs. And I still got busted, yes, but like I busted to a very small degree. You know, I have like a sense for fucking like danger, but also a sense for opportunity. And that's what I see coming, you know, it's, the average person thinks they're suffering now. But yeah, it's going to be a different kind of fucking thing. They'll feel it in their soul. It's not going to be a suffering where like you physically suffer, like beating up and like punished and like shit like that. It's just a suffering in the soul. It's a suffering of like regret because the opportunities that they won't take. You know, it's, the world ends not with a crack, like a bang, but with a whimper because people fucking surrender. Like they surrender in their soul. And that's VR and things like that. Like they surrender into a reality that's not real, but it's just comfortable. That's how things go. VR will be a massive fucking like, the standards of men will drop astronomically once VR's around. You know, people will be just massive slobs and they'll like exist to like just get into VR where they're a chat, but they'll have very little incentives to chase it on the outside because that's real work. Their work tolerance will be fucking zero. Do I believe in investing in emerging nations? Depends. If you have an edge, like if you know people there, you know people in like government or politics, or like you have like access to funds there that are successful, then I do. But like a lot of guys thought that they could invest into Russia. I was telling a lot of guys not to invest into the market in Russia when it crashed. They were trying to like figure out little ways that they could get money in there because it was difficult. And then the stocks, like they closed the stock market essentially for like weeks and the stocks crashed like another 80%. 1 second, I'm gonna get this. Hey mate. Thanks fella.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Oh, brilliant, I appreciate it. It's okay. Thank you very much, mate. It's great again. Let me know when I owe you money again.
Yeah, sure. It's you paid for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So...
You just let me know when it's good to go.
Okay.
I'll sort it out. Thanks, Mark. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Bought me some fucking cake. See, it's different when people fucking like look after you. You know, it's not just about the money. It's a respect thing. A lot of guys wouldn't fucking understand that. But, yeah, where was I up to? I was talking about fucking investing into emerging nations. No, not unless you've got an edge. You know, a lot of guys here, like I said, invested into Russia and things like that before the collapse. They thought they were being fucking clever. They don't understand the market there's completely manipulated. You know, they can just fuck foreigners over for fun. You know, if you think that like a lot of you fucking don't understand like that you can have like, unless you're somebody, like you know someone over there, it's not a market that you just fly into. You know, it's like you can buy houses and things there and they can just take them off you. Like if you're a nobody, just some fucking like foreigner that just thinks that he can buy like parts of infrastructure that have gone down, they'll just take your house off you. They don't give a shit. You got to know people in those sort of markets. But emerging markets, like if you're investing in like Brazil or somewhere like that, I think that those markets can do okay. But I have a different theory of those markets in the long term. I think that a lot of like South America and things like that, South America maybe not so bad because at least they're near the States, but some of these other like nations, I think that in the long term, a lot of those like, and it's very cold, but a lot of those like people aren't needed. Like in the future, like in a tech future, a lot of guys will get crazy about not really understanding that like global population decline isn't a big deal because a lot of the people they're not needed anymore. Like it's the days of like just numbers, like having a mass amount of people, those days are kind of over. You know, it's more like it's having valuable people. You know, it's just having a mass of people. They don't need a lot of that fucking like labor that they used to need, like labor intensive crap. A lot of like the technology and like, you know, machinery and things like that have replaced a lot of that shit. So the average guy gets really obsessed with like population numbers and crap like that. And that's, yeah, again, it's not really needed. Like a lot of the corpos and that probably get obsessed about it because they think that they want to like flood the countries with more people so that they can get cheap work out of everyone and fuck the whole market up. But for the average guy, like it's, yeah, the emerging nations, a lot of them in the future, like do you really think they're needed? Like, you know, in a technological world? Is the fucking like cheap labor or like the guy who's like making clothes or like picking fucking like berries and doing all that crap, is he really needed when like machinery and automation that takes over? So what do you think happens to him? You know, it's a lot of these countries through like Africa and things like that, and it's a controversial opinion, but it's just a fact. You know, it's, you keep people alive on like a respirator. You know, it's like you can't keep people alive like in fucking camps and that their whole life. Like their whole life is just a refugee camp where like rapes and shit happen non-stop. You know, they'll have like kids in a refugee camp and live there for like fucking a decade or more. You know, you got to wonder if they're like, are they better off under those circumstances? Like you can't just keep people alive in like a test tube. You know, it's like natural selection and things like that. That's a real thing. You know, I understand why the corpos and that keep them alive because they've got big plans for them in the future. They'll use those sort of people as a battery. That's what they don't tell you. Like in VR and things like that, they can extract from you. They can extract from those third worlders. That's what they don't tell you. Like people just look at that sort of stuff and think that it's all done out of charity. And it's not. It's just fucking like done because they have big plans for them in the future. Pretty obvious to me. Nothing is ever free. You know, it's only free if they get shit out of you later. Would you say respect is the most important thing? I'd say respect is the most important thing for a man. The most important thing is giving respect and receiving. It's respect and fear are different. You know, it's probably the ultimate to be feared, I guess, but only feared if you're powerful. Like if you only feared, yeah, fear is probably the ultimate, but fear is not something that you can like hold over the long term unless you're like a dictator or some sort of like in power, like politics or something like that, and you're very fucking powerful. Because fear, if you're like a feared mobster or something like that, you can still lose all that. Like you still got the police and shit that can still fuck you over. But if you're like running a country or something like that, then yeah, fear's the ultimate. But yeah, respect is extremely important to be able to give it and take it. Like if you can't give respect, to me, you're not respectable. You know, I think I've come to respect a ton in the past. It's just important, you know, to give respect, to show that like if you meet a man and you can look him in the eye, just for like, you know, you're not staring him down or whatever, but he can be like, this guy's assessing me, like this guy sees if I'm an equal to him or a peer. That's important. You know, a lot of guys, yeah, can't give respect or whatever because they're still like infants, like childish. They live in like scarcity. If you can give respect and it's visible, it shows that you're confident. You know, it's respect isn't submission. You know, it's very different. Like a lot of guys are trained, like just to even show respect to someone means that person must be so far above them. I respect people that are only better than me in certain things. I respect people that are fucking like, you know, or can respect someone and still be like superior to them in a lot of ways. But I still respect parts of them, you know, and I still respect them as a person. Respect and fear are different because to me, respect is like, you know, I don't want to hurt this guy's feelings because like I respect who he is. You know, like, but fear is like, I don't want to hurt this guy's feelings because he could fucking come and kill me. You know, so it's a bit different. How do I get my motivation back in life after seeing my best mates kill themselves and having to deliver the news to their families? It's difficult. It's difficult with things like that happen. Like, it's difficult because some things happen and you're never the same person again. Like, that's what they don't tell you. Like, you know, I've sat in a veterans hospital for like 14 months with veterans with massive fucking issues from the war and things like that. And a lot of them would just talk about how wishing that they could be the person that they were before the shit happened, like before whatever incident happened that fucked them up. A lot of the time it is just being exposed to war for too long. It changes your brain and it doesn't really go back to normal. But some things happen and you're never going to be the same guy, like after. You know, you might get dumped, or like you might have like a really traumatic experience, like walk in and your chick's getting banged by another dude or something like that. And then you just think like you get all fucked up because you think like you need to go back to how you were. But sometimes like you got to accept that things have changed. Like, you know, for some of you it's like you're not that boy anymore. Like before you delivered the news, maybe you were like still like not, like that was part of becoming a man. Like you stood up and did the hard shit. Like you did something that's difficult. So now you look back and you're like, oh, but my innocence is gone. Like you've been exposed to like part of reality. That death is a real thing. And to have to deliver bad news to people, like it is hard. Especially families. Like obviously they're very traumatized. And you can like take on a lot of that like bad energy or whatever and you feel guilty. But it doesn't sound like it's your issue. Like, you know, just because like people died or even if they were good friends of yours or whatever, they don't want you to like fucking sit around and fuck your whole life up. You know, death is in itself a part of life. You know, it's like everyone's going to die. You know, some people just meet death sooner than others, but we're all going to meet it. You know, so sitting there and dwelling on the past or like all this sort of stuff, I don't believe that's like fucking good. I think that like if someone dies, I don't go to their funeral or something like that, even if they're a friend. I think that just because they're like fucking dead or whatever, or like you go to their funeral, you don't forget them. Like, you know, you don't forget the good times that you had with the person. And you probably won't forget that incident of having to deliver like bad news. You know, but that doesn't mean that like it defines who you are. But it doesn't mean also that like you're the same guy before it happened. You know, some of these things happen and like it's like you're a brick wall and it demolishes you and then like you rebuild yourself, but like bricks are missing. Like it's different. You're not the same guy that you were. Like some of you, like something traumatic happens and you just think like, how can I get back to how I was? And that's the like vicious loop. Like it's a vicious cycle. I saw a lot of that with veterans. I myself had a bad accident and got PTSD, so I've gone through it myself. I used to fucking like just think how I could go back to exactly how I was. Often it would be like I wanted the life that I used to live before that bad accident. But yeah, life's fluid. Like you can't get stuck in like times and think how you can go back to that. Because life's going forward, and life is something like you can only live it forward, but you can only understand it like when you look back on it. But it's not like to reflect yet for you. You know, it's not a time to reflect until like you fucking like lived a long life. You know, it's the reflection can often bring about a lot of guilt and like confusion and things like that. You know, you'll look back on this time one day and understand why it happened. And you know, these things happen and like they build you into a different type of man. Some of you, like, yeah, it's your innocence is just lost. Like you've got a taste of like a different kind of reality that shit can't happen. And you know, it can either make you or break you. You know, you can look at that and be like, oh, two of my friends died, so that means like that my life, like I have to fucking like get the most out of it. Like my life's not guaranteed either. Or you can sit there and be like, oh, yeah, I just miss him so much and now I'm just going to fucking sit around and feel sorry for myself and cry nonstop. Like it's, you know, it's just how you look at things. You know, I'm not saying that it's not fucking difficult at times. You know, it's hard to lose people that you care about. You know, but you know that like they don't want you to sit around and fucking like think about them nonstop so much that you don't even like live your own life. Like they're gone, but they're not fucking like looking down on you thinking like, oh, I just wish that he would just fucking like mourn me nonstop. Like they want you to be happy. You know, you're not going to be happy living in the past. Living in the past is just living in things that you can't change. You know, you can't change like what happened. Like you don't have a time machine to fucking fly back and change the event. So the best thing that you can do is just like move forward, and one day you will understand why it happened. You know, not that why it happened. Obviously they died. It's not fucking like your fault or whatever. But you'll understand what it like meant to you. Like it's part of your own evolution as a man. You know, that's what you can control, your future. What is my opinion on steroids? I have a pretty strong opinion on steroids. I mean, I've sold them for a fucking massive time. I used to sell them, obviously not now, but I used to sell them like when we were just getting powders from fucking China when I was like 21 years old. You know, so 16 years ago, this is before the Chinese Olympics when you could just import them, you know, into Australia, and we used to make fucking like hundreds of vials at a time. So I know probably everything there is to know about the steroids themselves. Like I know what they do to people. I don't know like at a molecular level fucking the weights of all the fucking shit and shit like that, but I have a very high understanding. I think that steroids in general, they're not something that you take unless you've been in the gym for years, like you've built a base. Steroids in general, they're not something you take unless you're like, you know, maybe like 25 or so. Because I think that your brain is still like, not just your brain, but like your fucking like sexual organ, like the sexual system is still fucking happening until like your early 20s. And I think your brain itself is still like going not exactly where it's going to be until you're like 25. So you take testosterone and things like that, and a lot of guys, like, they don't understand the androgens themselves can cause like dopamine spikes as well. So they can be addicted. Like they can get like, it's not just physically addictive, because when you're in the gym you can like bench more and do more shit. It's like can be a psychological addiction because you feel quite good on them. It almost gets like a low state of euphoria. Like you take like Dynabol or something and it's known for like being good. Like you feel good when you take it. Some guys used to take it as like a mild antidepressant. Like they just take a low dose of it. So yeah, it's steroids itself. I'd understand like too if you're competing in things like that. It makes sense, but it depends on the steroids to me. Like if you're taking like nandrolones and things like that, I think that's a bit crazy for guys. If I was a guy and I just decided that I want to cycle, I would just take probably like testosterone itself, maybe like boldenone or something like that, stacked on top, something dry and something that's like quite easy on your system. I know guys take like Anavar and things like that. It's easy on the system. And I know a lot of chicks now take steroids and SARMs and things like that. I would not take SARMs. I wouldn't touch any of these like growth fragments or anything like that either. A lot of that shit comes out of China, and I've seen a lot of that crap, and they don't really know what it's going to do. You know, it's testosterone, and that's been around for a very long time. You know, it's not something that's just appeared out of the blue. Like these SARMs and that, there will be fucking problems like down the pipe. A lot of the stuff happening out of China, it just happens in these bucket shops, and no one really even knows what they're getting. Like they're just taking random powders. I think that's fucking dumb. And a lot of the growth fragments and things like that too, I wouldn't take that shit. I wouldn't fuck around with like your growth hormone or your IGF or things like that too, and especially not if you haven't had like checks for cancers and things like that. Like growth factors grow a lot of things, like, and they can grow tumors as well if you have them like and you don't know about them. You know, and that can happen too if you're taking like higher doses of test and things like that. It can increase your like IGF and things like that. But yeah, I would think test itself is good. Like, you know, like a Sustanon or like Test E or something like that. If you take like 250, 500 milligrams a week, and you're just like a guy who's been in the gym for years, but you just want to like bulk for like, you know, 12, 14 weeks or something like that. I can understand that, you know, but again, it's just going to depend on your age. And if you're fucking around with your hormones, it's not like you need to at least take like time on and then 2 times time off. You know, maybe you're on for 3 months, then you're off for 6. A lot of guys will just pretty much cycle non-stop now and just run through fucking like everything. You know, I wouldn't touch trenbolone. You know, it's used to be like Finaplex back when we used to like be able to get the pallets. We'd get the pallets and then you turn it into Tranase. And it's not really shit that's made for humans. It's made for bulls back then, you know, to get as big as possible. It's not made for people that will expect it to live to be 70 years. You know, it's a very good thing that, yeah, you grow a lot on it. It keeps you lean. You can eat fucking pretty much whatever you want. But it's very hard on your organs. It's very hard on your internal organs. It's hard on the mind too. Like a lot of guys do a lot of crazy shit on Trent. And they can get in a lot of trouble. And they can blow their whole relationship up and things like that. It's difficult on the mind. It's like can blow your prolactin out and things like that too. So it can cause like sexual side effects. And they can roll on after your fucking cycle ends. You know, a lot of guys can end up fucking themselves up. And the thing is, like, if you're always cycling, like your body can't get into homeostasis where it's like stable, you know, so it can end up like fucking the guy up where he needs to be on TRT forever, or like his dick doesn't work properly or things like that. Like ask a girl who fucking dates bodybuilders, a lot of them are like can fuck like crazy for 2 months and then like can't fuck really at all for like 2 months, and a lot of shit like that happens. It's not a fucking great thing for it to happen. And the hard thing is too, if you haven't really got a foundation of training, if you're not on cycle, you're not going to really want to train because you're used to training fucking on juice. So now the concept of training natural, you're like, this is bullshit. I want the big gains, so I'm just going to train here and there. I'm just going to wait till I'm on cycle and train, and then I'm just going to fuck around otherwise. And that's bad. Yeah, if I was to do anything, it would just be test E, test sip, like fucking sussing on some sort of blend or something twice a week or something like that, and then like 250 or 500 milligrams a week for 12 to 16 weeks or something. I guess it depends how fucking big you are. And then if you've been on, if you've already trained for years and you're 25 plus, I think that's a decent cycle. You have to watch your blood pressure. You have to watch your fucking enzymes, for your liver and things like that. You also have to watch your fucking lipids, your cholesterol. To watch all that crap, LDL, HDL, all that sort of thing, your hematocrit as well. You have to watch all that crap. And then you have to, of course, watch your blood pressure and things like that. All that shit matters. And then you have to run PCT afterwards, so it's probably like Norvadex. I would not touch Clomid. I think that's very fucking dangerous. I had a friend of mine kill himself on Clomid. I think that it messes their brain up. It fucks you up bad. It's not something that people are meant to take. I've had a friend kill himself on Clomid. I've had another friend kill himself on Tren. I think that, both very fucking dangerous to the mind. Clomid itself, I think that's the worst one. For a PCT, I think Norvadex, and then probably Norvadex. I think guys run HCG as well. Can work, but yeah. So my take is, if you've got the foundation, it makes sense. But if you're fucking and you're happy to know that you might have to run TRT forever, one day, if you're 30 something years old and you cycle and you don't recover, which can happen. Maybe your balls just don't really want to work again. They've had a fucking knock, and now they don't want to kickstart. That can happen to guys, and they have to be on TRT for the rest of their life, which means that they have to jab at least once a week till the day they die. If you're happy to do that, okay. And understand that synthetic testosterone is not the same as normal testosterone. That fucking nerds don't tell you that. Just because guys have high T and shit like that, they can still their dick doesn't work. That's the funny thing, guys don't understand that. They think to have highest test is just amazing. Maybe your body's only built to be in the mid-range. So if you blow it out now and you just want to sit in the high range, it fucks it up. It's not for everyone. Just because you're in the highest of the higher range, that doesn't mean that you're going to feel better. You can feel fucking worse. You can feel tired, bloated, get side effects blood pressure. So just from that, I've seen guys sitting on the high end of the test, from fucking taking TRT, sitting on the high end, and they get side effects. They get bloated, blood pressure, they get edema in the ankles just from being in the high range. Some people just aren't made for that. Your body is you. Just because you're in the mid range, that doesn't mean that someone in the high range is going to get much better results. Your body knows how you're meant to be. That's what the dorks don't get. Everyone just thinks that to have high test is just the fucking be all end all. To have low test is fucked, but if you're in the mid range, for some people that's fine. Some people can go in the UFC and fucking they're just mid-range and still smash people, but then if you put them in the high range, they might have side effects. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a lot better, because your body's built different to the next person. Just because two people have the same levels for pretty much everything, one person can have side effects from that and the other doesn't. It's different like that. It's difficult. The more fucking compounds you stack as well, it's like a Jenga puzzle. Maybe you're on test as a base, and then you add anadrol or dynabol, and then you're oh, I'm going to add Tren as well, Tren E, and now it's a Jenga puzzle. It can cause more side effects that you didn't really understand, because the anadrol and the Tren can blow you prolactin or your progesterone out, and then you've got fucking test as well that can blow your BP out, you're getting very bloated and shit like that. The Tren can keep you dry, but you can get blood pressure sides from that too, and it can blow your fucking enzymes out. Your liver and kidney values can blow out. So it can cause you fucking problems. So my take would be mostly just test. I think test itself is the lowest risk and the best fucking return. But that's my take. What do I think about Forex trading and day trading? I think that in general is bullshit. I think Forex trading is, unless you have some edge or you're just fucking very good at it. Some people are, but 98 or 99% of people are shit at it. They just treat it it's pretty much gambling. I think that, unless you have some edge at it, it's crap. I think that day trading itself is pretty much bullshit. I've known, I ran a fund, we managed 80 million. And I've known many people that day trade and things like that, and I would say 95% plus lose money. You know, it's like poker. Like most people at the table are just going to have wins, but mostly lose and then go broke. But then like 5% of people are going to be able to win consistently. It takes a certain mind, but also an amount of luck. But yeah, I think that trading in general, day trading I don't like. I like swing trading on occasion because like if you're trading crypto or something, it's more manipulated to the upside. I know it's in a bear market now, but historically it's manipulated to the upside. So the time generally bails you out in a swing trade. I wouldn't be swing trading long at the moment. I mean, the market's generally heading down. It's like fucking trying to ski uphill. But yeah, that's my fucking take on that. I think that it's mostly bullshit, but if you're someone who's very profitable in that field, like you've shown that you like can make money for like months or like 6 months at a time, then maybe you're one of the few that can do it. But it's like sports betting or something. Just because you have a good week or a good month, like I've known many people that do that and then they fucking like lose their house then a year after. You know, you've got to consistently fucking succeed at it, and you've got to be real with yourself. A lot of that stuff isn't for everyone. It's not for me. So I don't sit there and fucking like, you got to accept that it's only for a certain person. Like sports betting, I don't sit there and think that I'm some fucking great sports bettor. Because if I sports bet, I can win but also lose. You know, you got to be realistic with yourself. Where did you find the balance between being classy and being a beast? I don't know if I've got the balance yet. I originally got like, you know, with a lot of my refinement come from like a friend of mine called Jules. He lives in Dubai. He's a very great man. He's classy, but then like he's also strong. You know, he's a professional. He's got a lot of talent. You know, he's in the army as well, so it's fine. Or he's in the army in Australia as well, so I find him very relatable. But yeah, a lot of the stuff, yeah, come from seeing him, the classier side. You know, so I think that in general, that's how a man should be. You know, you have to be able to be a bit wild. You can't just be like a good boy, classy boy. Like that's crap. Like you've still got to be able to fucking like kill if you need to, because that's keeps you fucking like honest, keeps you real. You know, you got to be able to back it up. You can't just, yeah, it can be a dangerous world out there if you've got money. Like you can be a target. You still have to be able to fucking like defend yourself, and also show that you can defend yourself. You know, I know a lot of the time, like when you get wealthy enough, even now you can get private security and things like that and all that sort of stuff, but it can keep yourself. Like I find walking around UAE, it's very safe. Like it's a very safe place, so it can like lower your awareness to situational dangers. But then when I come back to Eastern Europe, like I'm very aware that like shit happens here. So you have to be more aware. So you don't get extorted or like some shit happens or like shit can happen. So yeah, that's the balance. You know, you have to have some class to you. You know, you can't just be like some unrefined fucking stone running around, because when you go to nice restaurants and things like that, like it took me a long time to get used to that sort of stuff. Like I'll still grab shit with my hands. Like that's like jail style. You know, a lot of the time there's not like cutlery and stuff, so you just use your hands for shit. So that's it's taken a while for me to get out of that. Like it's not eating everything in like 5 seconds, because, you know, it's like you're very fucking hungry. That stuff never really leaves you. Like if you sat in a cell and like on lockdowns and things like that and only eating like bread fucking things twice a day, if they decide to bring them around, but you're still locked in a cell, there's no food, that shit never leaves you. So when you're like fucking seafood and things like that, it's hard to slow down. Like it's hard to remember that it's not going away. That stuff doesn't really fucking leave you, no matter how much money you have and how much food you have. Like if you'll see the shit that I do, like when I get drinks and that, I get like fucking many at a time. Like I got fucking 3 drinks there. You know, it's not shit that fucking really leaves you. You know, even though I've got abundance of everything, I'm always aware that it could lose it at any time. So that's just the way I am. You know, that shit never really left me. How much money should you be making per week to really enjoy clubbing as a man? That depends. To me, you can't really, but see, I'll say that now you can't really go to the club unless you have a table. But I have done that so many times when I was a broke boy. You know, I used to be the guy just walking around the clubs. I know that you're still going to want to go to clubs if you have no money. But back then when I used to go to the clubs, like there weren't really a lot of tables. Like people didn't really have the sort of expendable income that they have now to spend on flexing. The Instagram and that changed the game, because now they can flex online, so it justifies the expenditure. Back then, like it's just like MySpace days. People didn't really fucking like flex online. You know, it wasn't really a thing. So the clubs and that didn't really have like a massive table game, whereas now they do. And the bottles and all that shit. I could never have bought bottles, like until I started selling drugs. I would never have had that sort of money. But even when I was doing that sort of shit, like I'd still barely get tables. Like I'd still walk around and things like that. So I know guys are going to want to go to the clubs. Like that's where all the fucking like hot girls go. Like if you think that you're going to like have all these fucking like 8s and 9s and never go to the club, that's bullshit. You know, girls like that want to be seen. So they want to be shown off. So you have to take them places where people are. If you want some like fucking 5 or like maybe 6 or something, yeah, maybe you can still like keep her at home most of the time. But hot girls like to be seen. And if you like a smart guy, you want them on your own because then it increases your value. So yeah, I would say how much money do you need now to flex? Like to flex or to go in the club? I mean, to flex, you put really enjoy in fucking capitals. So I'm going to assume that you mean like to get the most out of it. If we go to the clubs here, like me and the guys, we'll spend, I think we went the other day, we spent 22K zloty, so I think it was probably like maybe 7 or 8K hours in one night. But there was probably like 10 of us. So it's not, that's pretty normal. Like that's a pretty normal fucking expenditure. You know, probably 10 of us and probably like a dozen girls as well. So yeah, that's pretty normal, like I would say. You know, so that's normal, but that's Poland, you know. If I went to Gold Coast, I could spend probably like 10K a night. You know, if things are more expensive there, like if you're getting bottles and like bottles of Dom and things like that and doing it right. So I would say if you want to go to the club, I don't think you should go to the club every weekend. I think that especially when you're building yourself, like, you know, a part of my success is because I was on parole and I couldn't go to the clubs. Like I was banned from every club. I was banned from every licensed venue. Like as part of my parole conditions, I couldn't go there. I just couldn't even enter. Like it was, I was on a curfew as well. I was curfew from after 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Like it was the only hours I could go out. And then after that, I had to be home and they would check. I had a tracking bracelet as well, so if I was out of the range, I would have fucking breached. But then I was also banned from all the venues for like 4 years. So that was a big part of my success because I couldn't go to the clubs, so all I could do was work. I think that you really have to earn that. Like you have to have a foundation or like income behind you to support that sort of lifestyle. Like you have to, like if you're taking like 5K, even like 10K a month out of your expenditure, like you're not investing that in yourself or investing that in your business or whatever, and you're just using it to flex while you're still building yourself up, that can be a big loss. Like that can really stunt your growth. And I don't know if you're getting that sort of 10K worth of value back unless you're like using it to get more attention, which you're funneling through your business. You're like an attention business. Then I understand that. But for a lot of you, like once you start going to the clubs or like even if you're going and flexing and things like that, a lot of it is like a kind of a bullshit game. Like, you know, when we go to the clubs or whatever, you just bring your own girls. Like you don't really like meet girls at the club. A lot of the girls that you're going to meet there are just crap, like, you know, just trash. And it's dead equity. Like if you're meeting a girl there and like you like pay for her bottles or whatever, like she comes and drinks with you or whatever, and there's a few girls there, they're drinking with you, but then like you fuck, and then it's kind of like doesn't really go anywhere because there's a club rat or whatever. It's essentially a dead equity. Whereas if you've got your girl, like you're seeing like a couple of girls maybe, and you bring them to the club and they have a good time, and then like you all leave together or whatever, that's like still a positive equity because they're still in your life. You know, like you're still, that's been a good experience, but they're still with you. So that makes sense to me. Like that is building positive equity. So people don't understand that. They don't think fucking business. They think like with their cock. How do I deal with sickness? Do I still work out? Take it easy or rest until back at 100%? Depends on the sickness. Like if you've got a cold or something like that. I don't think like if you've got a big cold, you should be at the gym. Because some people just train there and they're fucking contagious and they just spread the shit to everyone. I don't believe that. I think that, yeah, you have to fucking like care about the people around you. You can't just like fucking, just because you're sick, you're like sneezing all over the shit and everyone gets fucked up. I think that's crap. So yeah, but it depends. Like, and also if you're injured, like if you've got a fucking, some people think that it's cool to train through injuries. That's fucking dumb. Like when you get older, you will pay the penalty for that. Like, you know, maybe you've got a sore shoulder or something and you think that it's funny to like just keep fucking like doing heavy shoulder press or something with it. Like a sore shoulder, maybe you got like bursitis or something, which I've had. And you think that it's funny to just stack your shoulders up with massive amounts of weight still and just keep pushing through it. That's dumb. Like as soon as something eventually breaks, and it will, like that shit doesn't matter. Like you can get over injuries and that, like you're injured or whatever and you're 25 and like you get your thing fixed or whatever and that's fine. Like your knee or something, but then once you hit like late 30s, it starts to hurt. Like things start to fucking add up. Like I fucked my knee a couple of times in the army. I dislocated it twice and tore like a meniscus, but like an MCL or some other crap. And I noticed that now, like at 37, it's like if it's cold, it'll start to hurt. If it's fucking like run, I feel that it's like a weak point. I fucked my back in the army, and I noticed like if I don't stretch and things like that, it starts to fucking like get like, or could almost spasm. So yeah, it's shit that's funny and like it's fun to train through and everyone pretends to be the Terminator or something. That's fucking stupid. Like unless it's like do or die, unless it's shit like, you know, it's like fucking grand final in the Super Bowl and you've got a sore shoulder, but like you have to play because like everything's on the line. That makes sense. But some people will be like, think that like, it's like you're in the cage and you're like in some exhibition fight, some fucking like nothing's on the line, you know, you're just having a fight with like maybe a few friends or something like that. And it's just like a fight night. We used to have those in the army. And then someone will think like that it's real manly if they get like knocked down really bad to just get up and get knocked out. That's dumb. Like that is really fucking stupid. Like that's just your like ego, like getting you hurt. It's like, you know, it's nothing's on the line. It makes sense to like get up if you're obviously in a physical fight, like on the street, you have to keep going. But like you have to know when to take a knee. Like that's a big part of being a man. Like, you know, you have to know when you beat. Sometimes you are beat. Like, you know, you spar with someone and they're just better than you. You don't fucking like go hard until they knock you out cold. Like that's stupid. Because then like shit can happen. Like you can be left with like a lifelong injury, and that was only really because of your own ego that like fucking got you in that sort of position. It's like you've got sore knee or something, and then you think like there's like a chick there, so you're just going to max out the squat, and then you go to leave and like you've fucked your knee even worse, and now like you can't train for like 2 months or something. That's dumb. Like you've got to get longevity. Like, you know, your life's a very long time and you've only got one body. You don't want to fuck it up to like in your ego games, you know, because no one really like looks at that guy and thinks shit. Like in the army, remember, it reminds me of a time we had a big pack march in the army. The pack march like 30 Ks, you're carrying like, I don't know, maybe like 80 pounds or something. And then the guy, fucking one of the guys like didn't tell everyone that he was injured. And he thought like that he could just push through and that people would think like that he's the man or something. After he'd be like, oh, I had my knee strapped and like I did all this shit. And then like not even halfway through, like he starts breaking down and people have to look after him now. Like he knows that he's injured and he thinks he's the big man, not telling anyone. But now people have to like help him out and carry his shit and carry him. So now he's a liability. Like he's taken many men out of action now. Instead of him just saying, I can't do it because I'm injured. That's hard. Like it's hard to fucking look dumb like that. It's hard to admit like that there's some things that you can't do, because then you can't fucking like, if you don't say, now someone else has to do it for you. Like he's halfway through, he has to be carried now or like assisted, and someone has to carry his shit. So that's 2 men out, like 2 men that if something happens, like if there's a firefight or something, like they're out of action. So one person's now taking 2 out. So that's stupid, you know, like it's like if you go out in the ocean or something and like you pretend that you're a great swimmer, and then like you get into trouble or something, and then like someone has to save you and you both drown. Like that's stupid. You have to admit sometimes that like there are things that you can't do. That's just a part of being a man. Like it's a part of the hard part of being a man. You have to admit like, you know, that you have weak points, and people start to respect that. Like at first they might be like, this guy's a fucking retard, but then they're like, I respect that he said that. You know, I've been out in the boats with guys before, and then they tell you like shit starts to get a bit crazy out there, and then they're like, I can't swim. You know, that's, yeah, it's crazy. Like you should have said before we left, because then we could have got like a life vest. Like we don't have any jackets. Like if you get in the water, I'm not fucking like holding you up. Like you can fucking drown. That's just the way it goes. Like I'm not fucking like, you're a liability now. You know, it's hard to be a man. That's part of it. You got to be realistic and you got to be honest. What drives a man to cowardice? Well, cowardice is always the easiest option. You know, it's the easiest option to fucking like, you see your mate in a fight at the bar and you just pretend that you didn't see it because there's like 3 dudes and they're big dudes and you're like, oh, I don't want to get involved. So you just pretend you didn't see it and walk out. That's always fucking easier, you know, than like running up and having to get involved. So it's always the easiest option to fucking like take the path of least resistance. So of course people are generally going to pick the easy option and then justify why they did it. You know, I know a lot of the fucking like shit that gets posted on TikTok's controversial, and a lot of the stuff like, are you a coward or things like that, and then guys will be red-faced typing how they're not, and how men don't fucking like, you know, I could get knifed, man, like, oh, I'm just not going to fucking like stand up for myself because someone could pull a blade out and stab me. You know, that's such an extreme case. Like I've had knives pulled on me, I've been bottled, I've been stabbed. You know, I've had fucking like a gun pulled on me. They're extreme situations. They don't happen all the time. A lot of you need to turn the TV off. And some of you, yeah, if you're living in like some complete slum, like these things do happen, but that's part of having a crew. Like, you know, you'll never have a crew or never be a member of a crew because a lot of you are worms. Like there's no need in your crew for a worm. Like you have to have people that like look after you and care about you. Like if you're in a place where it's extremely violent, I don't know why you wouldn't have like a team with you and do everything together. So if one gets fucked up, like everyone's fucking in, and that's how you protect yourself. Like, you know, you go to Eastern Europe and things like that, it is dangerous. So people have teams and crews and families and things like that. The reason why like the average white boy in fucking UK is so easy to push around is because he's on his own. Like, you know, the other people know that they have to unite together. For the average little white boy there, he's easy to push around because he's like separated, like he's an individual. If he was united or like he had a team or like he had a bunch of them, people wouldn't fuck him up so much. He's easy to just bully there because like he can't do shit. Like how long do you think these guys would be running around with knives if someone just pulled out a gun and just shot like 5 of them a night? wouldn't happen much. It would be fucking like, you can't fight violence with like being passive. Like violence is only stopped with violence. You know, it's the strategy though over there. I mean, the police could obviously fucking neuter it at any moment, but they just let it go. Because again, it's about like causing chaos. It's just part of it. Why do you think that they let like all these fucking like immigrants and shit the place up? It's intentional. The rich people don't really feel it because they have private security. It's just like middle class that get terminated because they're in the shit. Like their property prices and that drop, but the rich areas, they don't fucking notice it. Theirs actually goes up because everyone wants to move there. Because, you know, it's the only safe places. If they had all these peasants running around with machetes through like the rich neighborhoods, it wouldn't happen for very long. Shit would happen. But it's always like the average peasant just shits up his own fucking hood. You know, like he shits up the people who can't afford to fucking lose, just like him. Like he goes in and just damages the class just slightly above him. So instead of like, he has nothing, but now like the person who was slightly just ahead but trying to like get ahead with the family has nothing as well now because like this person's just shit it up. Like he's poisoning the well for fucking his own people. It's a disaster. It's just selfish. You know, it's just a fucking peasant crime. But all that sort of shit could be stopped like if fucking like people teamed up and just started fucking shooting these people. It's not difficult. But again, a lot of that stuff is because they've like taken off the leadership position of the gangs. Like the mafia or the mob or whatever, like of those specific areas, they take out the leadership and then they let all these peasants run through with machetes. That shit wouldn't happen in the old days. They would have been fucking like shut down fast. They wouldn't have even showed up there. Those sort of people are just bullies, like they're just cowards. You know, the one who's running around in a mob of like machetes and like attacking people and stabbing people or whatever, that's just like groupthink. You know, that sort of individual goes to prison and like smartens up real fast. That shit doesn't happen in there. You know, the person who's really violent on the outside, like if he thinks that he's going to come to prison and be violent, he's in for a fucking rude awakening. That sort of shit doesn't happen there. You know, it's not like a bunch of little peasants. Like there's shit really only happens if it's authorized. You know, they'll realize quickly that it's like some structure there. If they run around fighting people, they'll be fucking killed. You can't just fight random people unless it's like authorized or there's consequences. You can't just run around causing chaos and shit the place up. Because if you're fighting in the unit or whatever and like doing dumb shit, people are doing things in the unit, like there's things happening. So if you like get the unit closed down or you get like squad goes through the unit and things like that and they find shit, you're fucked. You know, so you can't just do like dumb shit like that. Like there's consequences to it, and that's the way it should be. That's the way it would be if the like police weren't taking out the leadership roles. You know, like do you think guys would be running around with machetes if there's like mafia there and they just start killing them? You know, it wouldn't happen. You wouldn't see like the fucking organised crime fighting peasants. Like it would be a very fucking quick fight. You know, that's the way that it's meant to be. Because the peasants just hurt the average Joe. You know, the peasants know to leave like the criminals alone. Like I've never had issue with the fucking like guy with a blade, like some average like shit kicker bowling around. That's never happened to me. But it's the guy like the mum who's like walking around with a pram and then she gets the pram knocked over and fucking stabbed and the guy runs off with like 50 pounds of her fucking money. That's the shit that happens when it's like a free-for-all. You know, the fucking like wolf just eats the sheep. You know, that's not the way it's meant to be. So that's fucking dumb. Advice to women who want to be a wife and a mother, but also want to make a name for themselves. Depends what fucking name you want to make for yourself. If you want to make a name for yourself as a hoe, like fucking known by a bunch of dudes, that's a pretty bad fucking idea if you want to be a wife and mother. I think the best thing that a woman can be is modest. I think that a woman has to like protect her modesty. She has to have something that the man's like proud to like associate with, and a lot of that is like a woman who hasn't been banged out by dudes. A woman that guys like don't really like, you don't know anyone that's fucked her. Like, you know, you don't really like, there's not anyone that's like fucking, you know, you're not running around and there's dudes that have got photos of like blowing on her face. Like, you know, that's pretty important for guys. And I know a lot of that's like in the West reframed as insecurity, but it's not. Like, no one wants to have like kids with someone who's like being pounded out. That's like, you know, that you're like running around with like some fucking like 10th place trophy, just holding it up like you, as though you're proud of it. And no one's really proud of it. I'll go down in looks to get a girl that's like more modest, or like a girl that's more like clean, like more pure. I think the purity is very important. You know, it's like an innocence that you want to fucking like protect. If some girl's like hardened and had a bunch of dudes, like that's gonna lower her value a lot. Like, and it's not someone that you want to have kids with. You know, it's not someone that you want to fucking like get too serious with, in my opinion. So I think that if you want to be a good wife and mother, you need to like just build like the qualities that make you a good wife and mother. I mean, it's harder for me to talk to women, but I would imagine like learning to help out. You know, have you ever helped men? Like, were you helping your dad out and doing things like around the house and things like that? Or like, are you observant? Like, if something needs, like your man needs something done, like, do you do it? Or do you sit back and be like, I'm just waiting for him to like fucking ask me to do it and all this crap? Because if he's a busy man, if he's not some fucking like loser sitting on the couch playing fucking like God of War every second, then that's, yeah, he's gonna be too busy to fucking like micromanage you to like do the basic shit, and that turns guys off. Like, the qualities that men look for, like men who have fucking options look for in a wife and a mother, are different to the qualities that he's going to look for in like some hood rat. You know, if I'm looking for just a fuck, like I don't really think if she's going to be a good mother or whatever, because I'm not like trying to have kids with her. But if I'm looking for like a wife and a mother and things, the things that I'm more observant on, like does she help out? Is she like an asset? Does she cause like no drama? You know, if drama happens around her, does she get involved? Is she like trying to throw herself into like some sort of fucking conflict? Is she like doing anything unusual like on Instagram, or does she like have like any exes or whatever that are fucking like trash or like trouble? Does she have like, you know, or any sort of resume of like a long-term relationship? Like maybe she's like 24 or something, and has she been with like one dude for like years? Or has she got like a heap of like Tinder fucking sex sessions under her belt? You know, like, does she have a track record of success in relationships? Does she have like a track record of like wanting to be a wife? Does she like, can she help around the house? Can she cook? Can she like clean up and do things? Can she like help her man out, like fucking help him out with his business? And like, does she make him feel good? Is she pleasant? Does she like fucking an asset? I think all that stuff matters, you know. And is she going to be a good mother? You know, does she have qualities that I want to replicate if I have a daughter? You know, I think that if you have a daughter for a man, I think a lot of that comes down to the woman. I think that like it's harder for a man to like program a woman. I think it's important for a father to be in his daughter's life, but I need to know, like, I would want her to be like her mother. So I would only ever have kids with someone if I knew like that their mother was going to be a mother that my daughter, I would want her to replicate, like to be exactly like that. I would be happy. So that's a big thing to me. I wouldn't have kids with some fucking loser, you know, or some hood rat. You know, I have had the opportunity to have that, and I've knocked all that shit back. I just think that, yeah, if you're having a daughter, like, to know that you just want to replicate your girl, you know, like your wife. You know, I think that's very important. I think that if you want to be a wife and a mother, you've got to like signal that. Signal that through, yeah, just keeping some modesty to you. A guy looks at you and he's like, she's pure. Like, I don't know guys that have fucked her. She's not like signaling short term. She's signaling that she wants something serious. You know, she's not like trying to meet guys on Tinder. She's not like getting involved in these like bang sessions. She's not like signaling for fuckboy behavior. And then if you want to build a name for yourself, I don't know what you mean. It must be like, build a name for yourself means guys are going to know you. That's kind of like against what a guy would want if he wants a wife. You know, I guess a build a name for you might be like that you want to build a name at work, or like build a name like in some specific field. I think that's possible. But if I want a wife, I only want a wife really that's like going to work with me. I don't want some wife that's like dreams of having like fucking doing some shit that's outside of like shit that is with me. I guess like maybe more on the extreme end. You know, some people would say I'm more on like the controlling end because I know what I want. Like I've said it before, like I think a relationship with me, like a train is going in one direction. It's on the tracks, like the train pulls up, she jumps on, but it's only going in one direction. And she can get off if she wants, like later on. But the train can't turn around. Like it's not something that can do U-turns and all this shit. Because my goals and vision for what I want a girl that like fits into that. And in return, she's looked after, like she lives a great life, but she's like an asset of mine. Like she's a partner, yes, but she's also like just an asset. Like she's fucking like doing things to further my goal, which in turn means that we both win. I think that's important. So yeah, it's going to be difficult. I think that to build your name up means that more guys are going to know you, which is going to be a detriment for a lot of guys because they won't want that. They don't like that sort of shit. Like these influencers and shit online, these girls that have like 1 million followers and shit, no guy wants to wife her up. The only guy who wants to wife her up is the guy that tells her he wants to wife her up to fuck her. But no one really wants that. This one's a different one. Do you tolerate LGBT people? Yes. I'm very tolerant of people who are fucking like whatever sexual fucking ideology or like ideas that they want. That doesn't like intimidate me. Like I don't care what people do, like behind closed doors. I don't like in Australia or somewhere like that, like or America if they're trying to program kids, like I don't think that like an 8-year-old girl or 8-year-old boy should be like exposed to like gay teachers or something like that. If they're like outwardly gay, like if they're over the top or like, you know, they're not really at an age yet where they can make their own decision. They don't know who they are. So if they're like exposed to books and things like that that are like explaining gay couples and stuff like that, I think that it creates it puts them in a position that they probably shouldn't have been at that age. And now it confuses them because they don't know who they are yet. So it influences them to a large degree. But if I had like a son comes to me and he's like fucking 19 or something and he tells me that he's got a boyfriend, I wouldn't fucking like, you know, beat the fuck out of him or fucking like, you know, throw him off the balcony or something like that. That's like his own decision if he's an adult. And he tells me that, that's his own decision to make. You know, I don't fucking like think that would happen, but if it did, I wouldn't fucking like hate him for it. You know, I don't think that like you should like go around and beat gay people up either. I don't think that like, you know, as long as it's not like in your face, like I don't care if like two dudes are obviously together, but I wouldn't want like gay dudes coming up to me like saying that they want to suck my dick or something like that. That would be like very extreme. And I wouldn't want like if I have like my son there or something, I wouldn't want like, you know, like gay dudes like hooking up in front of him or something like that. I think that's like a bit extreme. But I wouldn't like, you know, run around and like tease them or something like that or like make fun of them or something like. I think that what people do behind closed doors is fine. I like the army policy, like as long as it's like not like thrown in people's faces, no one really gives a shit. You know, it's not like something that, you know, I think that sort of mindset of like, you know, picking on people like that, I think it's like kind of bigotry. You know, I think that it's not a fair thing to like, you know, just because someone wants a sexual orientation a certain way, I don't think that it means that they're a completely different person and that you can fucking like, you know, pick on them or like call them fucking like losers or pathetic or something like that. I think that in general, some of them probably have courage to go the way that they went. You know, if they're adults and they make the decision, it's their fucking like decision to make. It doesn't intimidate me. It's like nothing to do with me. But yeah, at the same time, like if I have a son, I wouldn't really want him like exposed to that non-stop. I don't care if he knows that like gay people exist, but I wouldn't like it like rammed down his fucking like neck. So yeah, I don't fucking like hate them or anything like that. I don't have a fucking issue with them. I don't think that it's fair if like people are fucking hating people just because they're a certain like sexual orientation. I think that's bullshit. I think that I'm more like for freedom of choice for that. But at the same time, I don't want it like thrown at me. Would you focus on one skill or finding a business that can scale? It's difficult. If it depends on what business. Like if you're not really skilled, you can't just like find a business and scale it. Like you have to have obviously skills or like talents in business to identify a business that's good and also make it a better business. It's not really something that you can just fucking do just because like some YouTuber says that you should fucking move into a specific field. Maybe that's not a field that there's money in. But if you're like become a good salesman or marketer or something like that, you can use that in your business later. You know, I think that we need to have one skill maxed out. And then you can move into other things. You know, you need to spend like 2 or 3 years like getting a high income skill that you master, and then that never really leaves you, and you can move it into other areas. So yeah, I think that it would be important to have one skill, and then finding a business can come after that. You know, it's a lot of people put like the cart before the horse. They just want to have a business so bad that like they have a business but it sucks, or they have a business but they're like an employee in that business anyway. They just get a job that's never going to not be a job, like, and it only pays like as much or less than a normal job. How can I get my dad to be healthy again? He got sick for a year and after that he just let himself go. How can I get him back on track? It's difficult because people can't really change like unless they want to change. And you know, he might be going through depression or something, like some sort of depressive episode or something like that. But a lot of people, yeah, they hit like a wall, and it's wall either makes or breaks the person. You can't like fucking get too obsessed with it, even though it's your dad. I know it can be difficult, but like you can't change people that don't want to change. You can't like fucking push a horse along. You know, it's eventually just going to stop and then go back to where it was. And you're just going to be tired, like you're just tiring yourself out. Like you need to just look at that sometimes. Like you need to inspire or whatever and lead from the front. But if your dad or whatever doesn't like take your fucking like leadership or whatever and get motivated himself, you just need to realize that when you have a son, like you can't go there and be that guy yourself. And sometimes the best thing that you can ever do is just realize like it can be parents like faults that they have and just be like, I never want to be like that myself. Because it's very easy to get like that. Like, you know, it's the more things change, the more they stay the same in a lot of ways. Like, you know, a lot of people will see qualities in their parents that they hate, and then one day they'll eventually be like, I'm exactly like that. I think genetics play a point in it, but also I think like, yeah, you have to really focus on not being like that. Like maybe you had a dad or something that's, yeah, some of his flaws, like he's got some very obvious flaws, and you sort of gravitate towards that yourself. That's what's acceptable to you, and as you age, you fall into that trap yourself. So you need to fucking like use it as motivation to never be like that for when you have a son. Like you need to be a beacon, because I'm sure you look at your dad and you're like who's running shit? Like, even if your dad's like 50 years old, like, or 60, he should still be like partly your hero. And if he's just like become like a couch potato, it's like your beacon is fucking like crush. It's like a lighthouse, and you're like, fuck, like my dad isn't even doing the right shit. Like now I'm confused, you know. So you need to fucking like take that as motivation to never end up like that yourself when you have your son, because you see it and you're like, that's fucking bad. So sometimes that's the best thing that you can do. But no, you can't change people that don't want to change themselves. It has to come from within them. Otherwise it will just be something that you fucking grind out and pretty much do yourself, and then they'll just go back to where they were. And it'll tire you out and waste your time. How do you protect yourself from extortion once you get to a certain level? Stay under the radar or what? Depends where you are. Depends who you know. I mean, there's no real like fucking rich people that don't have some sort of protection, insulation. You know, there's private security. There's lots of fucking like things behind the scenes with me. You know, people only see like 1% of the shit that happens with me. Like, you know, if people think that they're going to extort me, like they better bring fucking some serious firepower, because there will be fucking massive problems. Like people will die. So yeah, it's just generally like once you hit a certain level, there has to be consequences. Like if someone pokes you, it's like a rose. Like if someone grabs you, they have to fucking bleed. And it doesn't matter if they don't bleed as much as you did, they have to feel the pain. And that's just the way it goes. It's the only person that could really get to me would be another fucking like high up person. Because I mean, the shit kicker would be fucking like squashed in seconds. Like there's a lot of private security and things around. It's not the same here. There's lots of guns. It's not like fucking like Australia or something where you're under all these firearm control orders and you can't do shit. Part of why I don't live there, it'd be very difficult here. But extortion is a real thing. Extortion's a thing if you travel. Like if you're traveling to some like hellhole, like if you're going through parts of Eastern Europe that are completely unregulated, you could run into issues. It's more who you know. Like you have to know people at the higher end. Doesn't mean like knowing the fucking the ministers of all different areas, but you have to know people that matter. But people do, once they hit that certain level of wealth. But again, that comes down to giving respect to the right people and being respectable, You can't go into the thing, but then not getting involved in their industry or trying to take food off their table, It's about giving respect, being a person that people don't want to extort. Not so much that they will get hurt back, which they will, but they just have no reason to. Like I give a lot. Like I help out fucking people where I can. I help the people out here. Like I'm employing people and doing shit to extort me. You could probably theoretically do it if you're a very high end, but like you're only really hurting like yourself in your own country because people like me won't come here and like spend money here and invest here if shit happens. And then there's private security, weapons, lots of fucking consequences to that sort of stuff. So it can become, it depends. Like some crypto cuck running around with a ledger with like 10 million on it and no one. I mean, that's what happened in Bulgaria. That dude's fucking missing, the crypto millionaire. So you have to be a bit fucking smart about it. You can't just like run around being crazy. You have to have a crew, of course. I've said it a million times. What are my creative sides? I write poetry. A lot of poetry. I write things. I can write poetry quite fast if I want. I write a lot of things from the heart. I can be very romantic. That's part of my creative side. I can see things that people don't have and give them it. Like even friends. Like, they might like want something or like it's not even something that's that expensive. I can see what they like, that know what they want to hear. Like, maybe a part of them that's like a flaw that they've got within themselves and like I can help them with that. Or something that's missing from their business or something and I can fucking like give them advice on it. I think that's all part of my creativity. I can see people and like see like the bricks that are there that have built them and I can see parts that are fucked up and identify that and help them with it. It's part of my creative side. Another part of my creative side, I do have like in touch with like my loving side. I think that's a big thing. I think that a lot of guys are turned off from that because they want to be like that hardened shell. They're scared of getting hurt. I'm not scared of getting hurt. Shit doesn't worry me. When I was sitting in prison, the shit that I missed the most, I remember I used to, like I'd been in there probably like 6 months or whatever. And the shit that I started to miss the most was just like cuddling a girl or being like intimate with a girl, like just having a girl near you. It wasn't like the shit of just like fucking, like thinking how many like threesomes could I get, like fucking some chick in the club or like doing shit. That shit, it wasn't shit that I missed. So I understood then what was important. It's the relationship, it's like the closeness, that connection. It's very important. That's what shit's like missing in the West, that like, that emotional connection. And that's the hardest thing to get and keep because that's when you can get hurt. But without that, nothing's really possible. Like, nothing long term. So I understand that. I think man has to keep his logic about him, but he also needs to like, let go at a point. You let go to a point and still be safe. You just have to trust yourself. I trust myself because I know if things fall apart that I have fucking like, I'm me. Like, you can't take away what I am or what I have. You have to kill me. So I can still get fucking like, dozens of other girls in a week if I want. So I have options, so it doesn't really fucking like get to me that much. I found out my girl's body count was higher than she said. It's actually 25. And she had stopped talking to me during the initial talking stage for someone else. We've been dating for 6 months and they've been great, but I just found out recently, what should I do? It depends how old she is. 25 bodies, it's a lot. But it depends, like in the West, it's probably not. That's like a year for some of these girls. You'd be fucking amazed. Like, I have girls like I fucked like a few months ago or whatever, girls that I fuck with me, and they're still like, pretty much like, it's just like a fucking thing, like it's nothing to have sex. Like it's for these girls too, to fuck, and they can be beautiful girls and they'll still fucking like, fuck like 2 or 3 dudes in 1 week. I had a chick that I was fucking like a few months ago, and then she messages me to tell me like, oh, since me and you were together, she's like telling me how she'd fucked 4 dudes in 3 weeks. That's like extreme. And this is like a pretty girl, you know, not some fucking like hood rat. So I can imagine if you extrapolate that out, that girls can rack up 25 bodies in like 1 week or one year quite easily. That's only like what, one every 2 weeks or just under. So yeah, it depends on your fucking thing. Like, I think that the more bodies a girl has, like the more guys she's fucked, the worse she's going to be for the long-term relationship. She's got more exes, she's got more reference points, she's got more like exes in her past that can message, and more guys that she's fucked before, and it's easier to fuck them again. Because when girls have fucked a guy, they don't consider it like another body if they fuck the guy again, the same guy. Like if you fucked a girl before, it's a lot easier to fuck her again because you've already been there. Like, you know, it's just kind of goes back to where it was, like it as though you never like stopped fucking. So yeah, it's a problem to me, and it's obviously a big problem if she fucking like lied about it. She lied about it's a problem, but I don't even know how you find it out. Like, you should never ask a girl's body count. You know, maybe you found out through someone else, but you should never like sit a girl down and ask her how many guys she's fucked, like overall, because it shows like insecurity, but it's also shit that you don't really want to hear. And it also makes her think about other guys, like thinking about her exes. And it's kind of like a question that a cuck would ask. So yeah, I would never ask that. But now that you know, it's problematic. Guys, like a girl that I'm taking serious, like I wouldn't want to know that she's fucked more than like 5 dudes. And I'm sure that girls can lie, like it's pretty easy to just lie about it. But I don't like walking around and knowing like there's guys probably like in the vicinity that have like jizzed on her. You know, we go to the club and there's probably like guys that she's at least talked to. And like talk to that the guy has thought that he could fuck her, and now I'm walking around with her, and the guy's like thinks that he's like got a one up on me. He thinks that like we're in the same league. So yeah, guys are territorial like that. Like I'm very fucking territorial. If a girl's mine, like I think that I pretty much own her. Like she belongs to me. I don't know. That's like considered like toxic masculinity now, but that's just the way that I am. I think that a lot of that shit, yeah, it's like westernized as bullshit because it just creates the girl that doesn't really need to take responsibility for her actions. Like if she just fucking dudes like crazy, it doesn't mean shit. Yeah, it means shit to me. So yeah, I wouldn't fucking put up with that shit. 25 bodies, I mean, even if she's like 30, that's still, to me, probably extreme. But yeah, 25 bodies if she's under 25, like that's a lot. Like, you know, obviously she doesn't really have a track record of like any long-term dating experience unless she's just been cheating non-stop. So yeah, she's used to these like transient sex sessions. So it's going to be difficult for her to stay in a relationship. She's got 25 dudes that have been like fucking her, so I'm sure a few of them still message her and like her shit. So she knows they're still waiting in the background. Like she might have Snapchat or something where she can still chat to them. Like they're still waiting in the wind, and there'll be at least a few of them. So yeah, that's problematic. It's problematic because, yeah, for many reasons, but it's just not something that I would consider long term. I don't know, you've been together for 6 months and had a good time, but you've got to keep that in your mind. You know, like, it depends what you want. That's not something that, yeah, I would put up with. Like, it's too many bodies for me. I like a girl with less than 5, which now means getting girls that are fucking like, you know, like younger, like, you know, under 24 and between like 20 and 24. Because girls just run the body count off the hook now. It's fucking so dumb. Because no guy of means wants to be around a girl that's been fucked by a bunch of dudes. Like, no guy of means wants to walk around and like some like hood dudes just pounded your girl out and you're like treating her fucking well. Like, imagine you like fly a girl around or do something and then some guy knows that he's just like fucking nutted on her on some like floor mattress. Like, I used to be that dude that's done all that shit. So I would never put up with it now, but I don't know what to look for. You know, I know the qualities to look for and to see if a chick's a fucking hood rat on it. It's just obvious by how people treat her. The comfort that she has around other guys, the comfort that she has speaking up. A lot of girls are really comfortable. It's obvious they've got a lot of experience. Not just sexually, but like socially. Comfortable around other men. That's a problem. That's a big fucking problem. Like, a girl can have fucked one dude, but be fucking great in bed. Like, they fucked all the time, whatever, and she's a great fuck. That's fine. And a girl can have fucked 50 dudes and be a shit fuck. It's not really necessarily like that. It's just how comfortable she is around men. Particularly new guys. A lot of women are extremely comfortable around men because they've got a lot of fucking experience. That's a big fucking turn off. I like a girl that refers to me in public. Like, if there's a man, like a new man enters the vicinity, like she looks to me and like stands behind me or something and expects like I'm gonna fucking like be the one that interacts with him. I don't like these Western girls where they just run up and just start fucking talking to people non-stop, like new dudes and shit. That's disrespectful to me. I would never put up with that crap. To improve yourself, did you have to leave people behind? Yes. A lot of people you eventually have to cut ties with because you're moving in different directions. Like obviously I used to sell dope. I was in the army before that, so I had to cut ties with my army guys. The conditions that I got out of the army were pretty controversial. I had a bad accident, but then I fucking like went to the media about it and told them about my accident because they wouldn't accept that I had PTSD. And then they fucking admitted that I had PTSD, and then like fucking I could get treatment. So yeah, the conditions I left were controversial, so I couldn't talk to anyone from there. They'd gotten told pretty much not to talk to me, and I didn't talk to them either. So yeah, I had to leave that sort of lifestyle behind. Then I was selling dope and fucking doing all that shit. So I had to leave that shit behind as well. Once I got put on parole, I was on a no association order with anyone that was involved in any criminal activity or anyone that used drugs and anyone that I'd like offended with or done anything with. So for years I couldn't really associate with them. And for some reason, some parts, that was a great thing that happened. You know, a lot of that shit you had to leave behind because a lot of guys just want to reoffend. You know, they're just addicted to like that fucking crime lifestyle. And I didn't want to sit in prison for the rest of my life. Like, you know, I went to prison and it was very obvious from the guys there that a lot of them just like want to keep reoffending. They don't learn. Like, you know, the concept of going to prison year after year doesn't scare them. You know, it's the prison itself's not scary, but the concept of wasting so much time is. You know, like it's not a life to sit in some fucking hellhole, like hovel, around junkies and shit like that. But if you're a drug addict, they can still get high there, so they don't really give a fuck. But for me, yes, I had to leave a lot of people behind. A lot of people behind. But I got used to that, you know. I went to 8 schools when I was a kid. I moved fucking 8 times in 9 years. So I was always the new dude, so it wasn't that difficult for me to leave people behind. And I've had to leave friends behind, well, not really friends, but people that I've associated with that have fucked over someone in my friends group as well. I had to learn to cut them off. You know, if I had a friend that, or someone that was associated with me and they fucked a good friend of mine over, I will cut them off. I'm not one of those people that keeps friends with people that have been kicked out of my group. Like if I have a friendship circle and someone fucks up and gets kicked out, that's it. I don't fucking like, you know, betray my group and hang out with the person still. I don't create that conflict of interest because I know where it goes. It brings your own integrity in question, and you will find out a lot of the time that that person was kicked out for a reason when they fuck you over and you look like an idiot. Do people treat you differently because you have your tattoos? Yes. People treat you differently because of tattoos, especially around here because a lot of people have them, you know, but in Australia, I know a lot of guys just get covered in tattoos now because they think that that's a personality because they're fucking just like paper men. They get tattoos everywhere and then fucking act like they've got some story behind it, but they've never done jack shit. That's a fucking big thing in Australia. But yes, tattoos are fucking like, you know, people will treat you different. But I find that it's a filter. You know, it keeps away the people that I don't really want to talk to anyway. Like, I'm not for everyone. Like, you know, if you talk to me, I'm very easy to talk to, but I'm extremely difficult to get to know. You know, I'll talk to people on a surface level, but I don't really bring new people into my circle. You know, I'm a respectful person and fucking like, you know, if someone comes up to me on the street and they're respectful, I have no reason to fucking like insult them or be difficult or be like, you know, some like hardened dude. I'm not like that. I'm just a normal dude. But I don't like bring people into my circle unless they're like approved of or vetted or they go through a massive process. Because I've been like, you know, it's taken a while to get the circle that I have, and my circle, like, you know, it's people are doing things where I don't really want to bring, like, in myself, I don't bring like fucking unvetted people in because it's a problem. You know, it's no upside for me. So yes, they do treat you differently with tattoos, but they probably to a point shouldn't. You know, everyone's the same. Like, just because someone has tattoos or whatever, it's much the same. Everyone's pretty much the same person. You know, a lot of my tattoos just mean shit, you know, like it's a lot of the stuff that I went through at the time. You know, every tattoo that I have to me means something. A moment in my life that was important, you know, and it's all documented. You know, I can look at tattoos and it takes me back to that specific moment. It's as though that fucking thing, like, so I don't forget. You know, I got tattoos on me of people that have died. You know, it takes me back to that moment where I think of like good times that I've had with that person. Moments of myself where it's almost like I fucking died inside. You know, it's almost like, to me, like I've lived like 10 lives. You know, and each life or like life ending is pretty much like it's a new tattoo. So it's different for me. It's not just tattoos to be cool or something. A lot of my tattoos were done by like not the best artists in the world. That shit doesn't really matter to me. How do you deal with negative thoughts in your head? Negative self-talk. That's a big fucking thing. I used to get a lot of negative self-talk. I used to be a fucking video game professional, so I played professional Counter-Strike. But I used to love the game. I'd play it like 14 hours a day. But then as soon as the game turned off, I realized that I was a fat mess. I used to deal with a lot of fucking negative self-talk. I used to always think that I had social anxiety disorder. I used to think that I had like, you know, people didn't like me. Like I used to just fucking think like, you know, that I didn't really have anything to add to the world. Like I didn't have anything to say. Because I was just playing video games non-stop, you know, I didn't really fucking know anything else. My dad was incredibly sick when I was young, so he didn't really like fucking tell me a lot of stuff. You know, he was sick, so he was like fucking had a bad heart condition. So a lot of that I pretty much had to teach myself, and I did have a lot of negative thoughts. You know, I had a lot of negative thoughts when I was sitting in a veterans hospital for 14 months. I was sitting in a veterans hospital for 14 months, charged with drug trafficking. I had to fucking stay there. I was on bail to that address. I couldn't fucking leave. I was there 24 hours a day. Had a lot of negative thoughts then. I realised that I was looking at probably like, you know, sitting in jail for 8 years or something. And then I was sitting in a veterans hospital as well with guys telling me every day that they wanted to kill themselves. And not only that, like guys that were fucking like coming in and out for suicide attempts. I'd make like friends with guys and they would be pretty much like hanging on by a thread. You know, and they'd just pretty much tell me every day they wanted to die. So I was around an extremely negative environment. And I do fucking like, you know, have a lot of respect for those guys, and some of them I would still consider friends. But it is like, it's a very negative environment, that sort of place. Like it's a army veterans hospital, so a lot of the guys are like on their last legs. Like a lot of guys are in there because they're very sick, but also like a lot of it is mental illness, like PTSD and like depression and anxiety and a lot of other shit. And I also got put on a lot of medication there, so my head was just a fucking mess. And I was there for 14 months straight, you know, like I don't think people can really understand what it's like to sit in a hospital for 14 months. I think that like to sit in not just a hospital, but like a veterans hospital, like there's a lot of fucked up people there that are fucking like, you know, they're very depressed. The energy there is, it's things that you can never come back from. You know, people don't fucking like do anything after that sort of an existence. Like it's really where people go to die, or where people go to get managed, like on their way to like, you know, death. A lot of the guys there were getting like shock therapy and shit, where they get like, it's like they do it in a more civilized way, but like guys getting wheeled into like a shock thing for the head, and then they get wheeled out, like they're pretty much passed out, can't talk. They do it for depression. It's still a thing that happens there. So it's an environment where a lot of people can never recover from, and there is probably no more negative environment than that. That's, even prison was less negative than that, because prison you still can move around and do shit. You know, there's still guys that you can talk to that aren't like on their fucking last legs, but a lot of that, like in the veterans hospital, guys were completely fucked. Like, you know, their relationships were falling apart and all this other shit, and you'd see a lot of bad things. I'd see a lot of like the Vietnam veterans, the older guys, and they'd have like some wife comes in and just takes their card, walks down to the ATM in the hospital and just drains their account and then gives them their card back. So I'd see a lot of shit that I like fucking was just extremely blackpilling. And that was the most black-pilled moment of my life, like where I knew reality as it was. But that was fucking difficult, you know. A lot of the shit that I've gone through is shit that people don't ever come back from. You know, like you can't, if you went to that veterans hospital and pulled every guy out that's been there, there wouldn't be anyone that's done the shit that I've done. You know, no one goes on to become a multi-millionaire after that sort of thing. That ends people. You don't recover from that. So I've used a lot of that negative energy to fucking do things that were exceptional. You know, that's a big fucking quality of mine. That's part of what makes me like fucking exceptional. So I have had a lot of negative thoughts. I remember sitting in the hospital there and I thought like fucking that I was not gonna like make it. You know, I had a very state of dread because I was around so many people that were like suicidal or depressed that I was convinced that I was gonna die as well for a long period of time. Like I thought that there must be something really wrong with me and they haven't discovered it. So I've gone through a lot of that medical stuff. You know, I was in the army and fucking like had gotten kicked out, and then I tried to like kill myself. Like, you know, not I think like a month or two before I got discharged, I tried to fucking like kill myself. Didn't succeed and got taken to the hospital, and fucking like, you know, that was like a very much a negative self-talk moment, you know, but it was also incredibly freeing when I woke up, because I realize like that I'm kind of bulletproof. You know, I can take a lot of fucking damage in life. I can fucking like take a lot of like negativity and like reroute it and push it out into something good. You just haven't learned that with the negative self-talk, but even during those times, like I realized that you can't hate yourself. You can't, like, the world is already going to be against you. You have to be your best friend. See, I am my best friend. Like, if fucking someone like, I've got a lot of like respect for myself. You know, I respect a lot of the accomplishments that I've done, but I'm also like realizing I'm human. A lot of you don't treat yourself like with any sort of kindness either. You know, you don't realize like that you're still like a person, you're flawed. Like all of us are flawed people. The only person who is not flawed is the one that pretends that he's not flawed. Like we're all fucking like, even you believe in the Bible or whatever, like we're all created flawed. It's by design. So you can't like fucking think like that. Like an angel is an angel because like angels in heaven or whatever, they have no opportunity to sin. So it's all fucking like, you know, like bullshit. Like yeah, they're angels or whatever, but they're in heaven, like it's all fucking perfect up there. But we're down here. Like we're some degree in the shit. So we got the temptations and we got like the fucking like we have to live in the world. So I think that it's very different for us. Like the negative self-talk, it's, if you just got to be like kind to yourself and realize that you're just blood and bone. Like, you know, you're still dealing with like, you're reacting to the world itself. You know, it's, some of you don't love yourself enough. Like, and that's why you spew a lot of negativity and shit online. Like the idea of loving another man, like even a friend, is so fucking foreign to you. But you don't understand that. Like you can't love someone that's in your own image because you don't love yourself. And the idea of even loving a woman or whatever is foreign to you because you're in such scarcity. Like you're scared to fucking take the risk because she could knock you down. And that's the fucking like the biggest things in life are the biggest risks is where the biggest return's going to be. Like a lot of the fucking things that I've done have had a massive risk and a massive return. You know, and a lot of the stuff I've taken has had a massive risk and a massive downfall. You know, it's the hardest things in life. It's always going to be like jumping off the fucking unknown, you know, like it's like the balcony is still fogged up and you still jump off anyway, not knowing if you're going to fucking like fall 20 floors to your death or it's like a small drop. You don't know. But that's where the fucking like, that's life. That's where the lived experience comes from and the lessons. But if you're sitting there beating yourself up nonstop, like you're thinking about shit that happened in the past, beating yourself up, like I've done shit in the past that I fucking like, you know, not extremely proud of, but I don't sit there and beat myself up over it. I understand that it's just like a reaction to the events that, like the situation I was in. Like people will judge parts of my life, but they're not me. Like they're not going through the shit that I have been through in my life. You know, I had a fucking gambling habit, I had a coke habit, you know, I've overcome all that shit. So I don't sit there and fucking like, you know, be hard on myself because I understand that I'm not perfect. A lot of you have the negative thoughts and that because yeah, it's shameful too, but then like you don't accept that you're a flawed person. You think you're meant to be some robot because a lot of the guys you follow online just lie to you and tell you that they're perfect, but they're not. Because I've seen a bunch of them in real life and a lot of them are just fucking like flawed as well. What is your favourite thing to do when you're not working? My favourite thing to do when I'm not working is probably eating. That's probably my favourite thing to fucking do. When I do, I'll not eat in the morning, so I'll fucking like let my calories stack up. So I don't eat in the morning. Morning and lunch I'll have coffee, and then like 3 or 4 or 5 or something in the afternoon I'll start eating. So all my calories are stacked up, so I can eat pretty much whatever the fuck I want. Like I've got cake and shit here, and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but I won't eat it yet. I'll wait till like 5 or 6, and then I'll just stack my calories and bomb like, I don't know, maybe I'll go to the gym first. I'll smash the gym session out and then know that when I'm there, I'll feel fucking great because I've got all these calories waiting for me, and then I'll just bomb them all once I get out. But yeah, eating's probably my favorite thing. Eating, fucking, having like a good girl, like a good sexual connection with a woman that's like, you know, and you're on that sort of fucking like same wavelength, that's really fucking like sexy to me. Having like a good girl around you that's like feminine energy, that's great to me. Like brothers, like sitting around your brothers and they're all laughing and seeing like, you know, people that respect you but you're giving them advice and things and they're like implementing and their life's getting better. All that stuff really fucking matters to me. I'm not really one of those guys that sits around and watches a lot of TV and shit like that. If I watch TV, a lot of it is like, you know, YouTube stuff like crypto things and things like that. I like to keep on track of a few of the like crypto people that talk. I watch like just see the state of the affairs. I mean, it's in a bear market now, so it's not something where you really need to watch it all non-stop. I mean, if you watch my TV now, I was fucking listening to Biggie Flume, so the fucking Flume remix of the Biggie album. But yeah, a lot of the shit that I like is just people. You know, like it's connections with people. I like building connections. I like fucking building equity and that sort of thing. I like you know, building new connections. Yeah, that shit's important to me. Seeing people around me grow and be better, that's very important. I think that, I like to give. You know, I like to give. I'm not one of those people that gives to get. I like to see people improve and their life change. I like to help fucking like essentially strangers that have done shit for me. Like if the cleaner or someone comes here and fucking does a good job, I like to be able to give her like a couple of hundred zloty just cause. Like it's a Christmas present or something, she can go and like buy something for her kids or something. That shit matters to me. So that's just matters. It's the connection, like it's the relationship building. It's like knowing that you've like had a difference in their life. Like it's in a week from now or like 2 weeks from now, I'm going to go to the orphanage here and donate like a few thousand worth of toys because a lot of them are fucked up from the war. Like kids have lost their parents, like had their parents in Ukraine and they can't get out. So a lot of the kids here are fucked up. So that's why I like work hard. Like I work to give. And I know it's fucking like so foreign to a lot of people. They don't understand the concept of giving, not to get. You know, it's what goes around in life comes around. That's the thing. Like, you know, I give all this content online for free and I know that me doing it, like I'll build a massive audience because I know what I say has value. I don't need to sit there and monetize it every second. Like one day I can promise you there will be 1 million subs on my TikTok and over 100k subs on my YouTube by the end of next year. I don't know, it sounds fucking crazy, but it's inevitable for me. It's not just inevitable because I provide a lot of value and it's going to come through that I'm not just giving to get. So I know that the shit's going to fucking work. And I know that people will level up. So that's what motivates me. That's the thing that I enjoy. You know, it motivates me that I can improve people's lives and it motivates me that I can like give to the next generation. I know what it's like my dad was incredibly sick. I didn't know fucking anything. I remember it wasn't until I got the internet that I like started to research and do things and I realized like how far behind I was. Because in school I didn't really have any friends because I was in 8 schools. I didn't know, like I knew that people were different to me, but I didn't know like the shit that I had to do. Like I was a weak kid, but I was like weak in so many ways. I didn't fucking know anything. And I know that there are a lot of guys that are exactly the position that I was in. They just posture and pretend that they're not in that position, like it's all bluster. It's like if they bluff, people won't call their bluff, but I can see that there's shit missing. And I don't judge them for that because I know what it's like. I didn't posture back then because I was like fucking just a dumb kid. I didn't have like any real strength to even posture. Like the internet was sort of pretty small. There was no like, you know, you could just jump online and troll. Couldn't really do that. Have you ever met real psychopaths? Yes, met psychopaths, sociopaths. I've met a lot of them over my time. I've had a lot to do with fucking that sort of disorder, antisocial personality disorder in general. I've had a lot of fucking exposure to it. So yes, I've met a lot of those sort of people. I think sociopaths, psychopaths are very different. A psychopath is someone who can't control their fucking like urges. They're violent as well. The psychopath, like the fucking, you know, it's not really something that, they can control. I think a psychopath, it's very rare that they would become very successful. I think a sociopath can become very successful. A psychopath can't really because it becomes like it's too fucking extreme. You know, they blow themselves up. They can't really control themselves. They get into bad predicaments. And they also have a lot of like fucking short-sightedness. It's like often runs with like narcissism, but extreme. So yeah, I find that a psychopath in general is going to fuck themselves up and it's very obvious that they have problems. Their narcissism gives them away. You know, a lot of guys and sociopaths too, they don't realise like how easy it is to spot people like that because they're very self-absorbed and very selfish. Maybe certain chicks can't see it, but like if you're dealing with one, it's very obvious how they talk and things like that. They talk themselves up and big note themselves and try and get social proof and they want it like a podium to stand on and things like that. It's very obvious. It takes it like a very much those like social manipulation games. They don't really work on me because I've been around that shit for so fucking long. Like, I've seen it in prison. I've seen it dealing dope. I've seen it by going to 8 schools. Like I'm very good at identifying people quickly. Who's powerful, who's not, who's pretend, who's got fucking like this problem, that problem. I'm very good at picking people apart. I'm fucking extremely good at it. When I was a kid, from 19 onwards, I used to read nothing but like psychology manuals and fucking shit. Like I used to read like David D'Angelo, all those like Mystery Method, all that crap. That's what I originally started on. But then I used to read like more complicated like psychological textbooks and things like that. And then I noticed, because I've been around like sociopaths before, like antisocial personality sort of people, like that have actually been diagnosed with it, not these internet warriors that think that they're fucking like that because they're just like unaware of themselves, like actual people that have that sort of disorder. So yeah, I think a sociopath in general can become very successful because they're like socially manipulative. It's a bit more easy to hide. Like if you're a psychopath and you're like hurting people deliberately or like intentionally like leaving a mark on the world, in that sort of today's world, that's like very hard to hide. It's more extreme. The sociopath though can blend in a lot easier. They can have more of an effect. They can get through like, politics and things like that without like unscathed. And then they can have real impact on the world. The days of the violent psychopath, that's like a thing in prison. Like, he's already in jail. It's like being violent now, it's too extreme. Like it stands out if you do violent actions. And I know people will say psychopaths aren't violent and things like that. There's some that aren't, but I find that more like a sociopath that's like that. And they can blend in, they can have more of a successful fucking thing. The sociopath in general, yeah, it's just going to be the lack of empathy. Like they can't really put themselves in other people's shoes. They can't really see things like outside of their own fucking like selfish urges, which is their own downfall as well. A person who is a sociopath but they're self-aware, they're very fucking dangerous. They can have a massive amount of success. It's probably almost the perfect fucking like structure to have, like a perfect mindset. If you're very success orientated and you're very self-orientated, but it'd be difficult if you have kids. You'd have to be very self-aware to know that your own faults, and you would have to be able to manufacture emotion. If you can manufacture emotion and you're a sociopath and you're aware that you are, the world is your oyster. But self-awareness is a big thing. Those people usually don't have it. They don't realize they have that sort of disorder until they're too old, and by then they've already fucked up a bunch. How can you tell if a relationship has turned toxic? Obviously, if there's fucking drama and shit happening, I think it's pretty easy to tell if a relationship's toxic. Do you feel bad when you leave the person's company? Do you like fucking not want to be around this person? It's meant to be a safe environment or relationship, but do you feel like it's unsafe? Like, do you not want to see this person? Is there conflict and shit? Like, are they taking away from like your like goals, like your plan in life? Or is like this relationship taking a massive chunk of your like attention? The perfect relationship for me is one that doesn't really require, like, we're not fighting during the day. I'm not sitting there, like, typing walls of text to her and trying to fucking, like, negotiate or, like, trying to not fight or all this other crap. That's bullshit. You've got to fucking be, like, grounded as well. You can't have a relationship that's toxic if you're trying to be successful. It's not anything that's long term. You shouldn't have a relationship where it takes a large part of your like brain capacity. Like your brain's got like it's a processor, and if you're like running at like 50% capacity, just thinking about what your fucking girl's doing or like fights or all this crap, your phone's buzzing because you get distracted because you got like abusive text or something from your girl. That's problematic. That should be like, that's not really a relationship. That's more like a fucking, like, this shit. It's like having a fucking, like, combatant. That's crap. And although that toxic stuff's, like, it's a dopamine rush, so it's thrilling. And, like, girls, a lot of them are, like, losers. So their time doesn't really matter. A lot of girls, like, in the West, too, a lot of them are just, like they're just predisposed to be wage cocks. They watch a lot of Kardashians and shit like that. So this sort of thing is like, it's still attention, like it's entertaining. Like you're still giving them your attention if you're fighting with them, like over text. So they're happy to do that. But then it's just like also like gives them access to like forgiveness in their own mind to do shit like cheat on you because they're like, oh, we're fighting or whatever. So that sort of thing, they're all red flags, like that sort of behavior. And their time, like a woman's time, doesn't really matter, like mean much. Like my time's $1,000 an hour, so some chick jumps on like her time's like what she's probably like bagging groceries or something, like fucking $10 an hour. Her time's pretty low compared to mine. So if we're fighting over text, like it's a very uneven value exchange. So I'm very aware of that. I don't do that crap. If a chick fights with me or like wants to be toxic or whatever, she's gone. Like she's fucked off with the quickness. You know, if like probably like 4 or 5 months ago, I had a chick like in the hotel and she's like come around to see me or whatever. And then we're like sitting down and she just gets, it's like a mouth on it. She's like a half, like she's from America, but like half an American girl. But she was like this was like a while away. It's like 5 months ago, whatever. And she's got like a mouth on her and she starts talking like general shit about how she's telling me about this Amazon web store that she's doing. And I'm just like I don't care. Like I really don't give a fuck. Like girls in general, like they try to prove their value to you when you're like higher value. A lot of girls think that like they want to tell you about how much money they make and all this other crap. Even though you don't talk about your own money, they just like think that they have to put themselves on like an even keel with you. A lot of girls will like, you've got like a Lamborghini and they'll start talking to you about the Lamborghini that they were in. Like that's a fucking big red flag. That's a turn off. That is such a turn off to guys. It's the biggest turn off to guys. The biggest turn off to me when I see a chick and she's like put photos up flying private. And I know like that's not her own money because I know that's like one dick that she had to take to get on that. And I know when she's in Mykonos at a table, that's another dick. I don't know, like when she posts in Dubai, like on the fucking like shisha, that's another dick. So all that shit's a turn off. Women don't know that. They don't know that they're flexing like other people's shit. It's like the dork who runs around and flexes in someone else's car. Like that's dumb. Like, you know, it's one thing to be like, you know, take a photo in someone else's car maybe and like be like, yeah, that was cool. But like you put it up as though it's your own and it's pretty embarrassing. Like it's very pretend. Chicks do that and it's like they're dumb for that as well. They're like flexing but chicks do it because they want to flex the status of the guy they're with, like because it makes them look better. So I understand that. What should you do if you're no longer attracted to a person you're dating? It depends. Are you like not physically attracted because they're getting fat, or are you like just not attracted to them at all now because like they've done things that, and over time like they're like passion and that's just burn out? Because that can happen. Like I know a lot of the dating stuff, guys think that if they get the girl, like they have to stop trying now. Like they can stop like trying to fucking like take her on dates or like make her feel good or like be romantic and things like that. And then the passion dies. You know, they become like friends, two friends like living together. And then they can also become like housemates, like they're not even friends anymore. Like if you're with a girl and it's a long-term relationship, you still have to take her on dates and do shit and make her feel special. That's part of the game. And she still has to do shit to make you feel special as well. It's not like something that just ends. A lot of guys think like once the dating phase is over, like the first, like they're together, that they can just like give up now and just let themselves go themselves. But like let her just fucking see him like sitting on the couch playing video games nonstop. That blows passion out. But yeah, if you're no longer attracted to her, you have to fucking dump her. You know, it's if she's just getting fat or whatever and you like want to give her an ultimatum to lose weight, then you can. But if the spark's gone, and it's obviously gone, the best thing to do with the breakups is to do it as quick as possible. It's not something where you can fucking like, you know, just drag it out, because it's your time's being wasted. And like we've already discussed, a lot of times the man's time's more important than the woman's. It's just, as a value exchange perspective, like she's getting more out of being with a guy than he's getting out of her. So if you know it's over, it's pretty dumb to just let it fucking like linger on. You gotta cut the cord. You know, it's not easy to break up with people. I've broken up with girls before that I haven't wanted to break up with. Broken up with girls that haven't done what I've like pretty much wanted. And I've had to break up with them, and I've had break up with girls that I've loved before, but they weren't doing what I wanted. You know, so I had to fucking end it. So that's the game. You know, you can't be afraid to lose. Like you can't. A lot of guys now are too scared to like make the decision. So instead of like shoot the shot, they'll just hold the ball until the buzzer goes off and then lose anyway. But now they've lost all that time as well. You need to fucking just take the shot and fucking like end it. You know, if it's gone badly, you need to wrap it up. But there's other things, like maybe she can enhance her appearance in other ways. You know, like if I'm with a girl and I tell her like I want her to get like implants or like shit that I want, like if I want her like have bigger tits, and I'm like, oh, I'll like send you to this doctor and do all this shit, and she told me no, I would dump her. I think that a girl like should want to please her man. You know, if I'm with a girl and like I tell her that like I want my name tattooed on it, if she said anything other than like where or like when, I would dump her. If I was with a chick and I was like, oh, I want you to get your tongue pierced or something, and she was like, no, I'm not doing that, I would dump her. You know, she should want to like do shit that makes you happy. A lot of you are just so used to settling for like fucking so much less than you deserve that the concept of that, like, it's so foreign to you. You believe in equality so much when equality is, for the most part, bullshit. It's, how is there equality when my time's worth so much money and hers isn't? Like, she has to make up for that downfall by being more fucking, doing shit more for me to even that. And even for a lot of men, your time is going to be worth a lot more than a woman's. It's just the way it goes. But you've got to understand that first. It's, a lot of you are with women, it's like you're some fucking pretty much engineer, but you're working like a fucking, as an intern, and then you're taking a shitty rate. But that's only because you haven't commanded more. You haven't commanded that your time's worth more than that. So you get what you fucking get. That's the way it goes. But yes, you should dump her if she's not fucking doing what you want, and she's not who you want it, and she doesn't make you look good. See, I know that if I were a woman, I want a fucking girl that looks good on my arm. I don't want some fucking beast running around. That's crap. Some chick that walks around with you and you're quite embarrassed. I like a girl that's a fucking doll next to me, looks good and is proud, takes care of her appearance and wants to look good for her man. And then I take her to nice places and show her off. I like that. I don't like to have some fucking cane toad bowling around, fucking knocking people over. That's bullshit. Have I ever met the one? In separate lives, I've met the one probably a few times. I've met women where I've been with where I know that if we had have stayed together that I would have been still happy enough with them. But the circumstances or whatever, I just wasn't the person that I needed to be at the time. I've had girls where I've been a fuckboy with them that were good girls. I've had one girl a few years ago that was a good girl, a great girl in a lot of ways. It's just the circumstances, I think, of how we got together and things like that. It's a lot of turbulence. It's when I was on parole and a lot of other shit had happened and I had a lot of shit outstanding, so I had a lot of stuff going on. But that's just the way life goes. I don't sit back and think oh, if only this or if only that. It's the way it goes. And I've had girls too. I had a girl when I was in the army. I had a girl before I went to the army that was a great girl. I've had at least 3 or 4 great girls in my life. It's just, it's the way it goes. It's no point looking and thinking that you can turn back time, because you can't. That fucking Cher song where she's if I could turn back time, that's bullshit. That's women's thinking. That's what you want women to think about you. But as a man, you can't think like that. It's life, like I've said, it's to be lived forward, but it can only be understood backwards. It's not something that fucking you can sit and look in the rearview mirror and be if only. That's a scarcity sort of mindset. I've got a girl now that I fucking have a lot of interest in. She's a good girl, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's just the way it goes. It's sometimes things just happen. It's sometimes the person can be the right person, but it's at the wrong time. It's you're having a good opportunity that comes along, but you just don't have the money or something to invest at the time, the liquidity. That can be a problem. It's things can just happen. That's the way life is. It's fluid. But you can't sit and think what if. That's, it's damaging to you. It's damaging to your growth as a man. So that's fucking, I think that's enough, lads. We've covered a fuckload of fucking topics. I think that we've covered many. Actually, let's go with this one. Do I think the art of pickup is still relevant today? For the most part, no. I think a lot of pickup was just relying on smoke and mirrors. It's a lot of fucking what you say and all this crap, where now it's more who you are. It's the guy who is the guy that's going to get the job because he's got the LinkedIn resume. The guy who is the guy is going to get the job because he's got the Instagram that shows his lifestyle exactly as it is. People know that he exists. The days of the pickup guy running around Hungry Jacks and McDonald's and shit like that and just spam approaching. Yeah, it's still a thing now. You can maybe have some success with it, but a lot of it is bullshit. You've got to be the person that you claim to be. A lot of that shit, if you've got a lot of time to be running around talking to girls and running around the mall and shit, your time's pretty fucking worthless. So you're pretending to inflate your value, but the actions that you're doing show that you're low value. So yeah, I think the pickup in itself, the socializing and having social awareness and not being afraid of rejection and things like that, that's a thing. But if you run around and get rejected a lot at the same time, you're learning bad behaviors. A lot of guys that do that are very low value. I've met many pickup guys, and I've not met many that can get girls that even I can. Like, you know, when I'm not a pickup guy. I've met a lot of these pickup guys, and the girls that they get are just like fucking sixes at best, or like sixes that are just like non-compliant. They don't even listen to them. Like, it's just mostly bullshit, you know. But I guess a lot of the guys like would learn that, or they were introduced to that, they probably started from a very low place. You know, maybe they were like very low value themselves, so to even get a six is like extreme. Like, it's much more than they probably could have gotten if they didn't learn pickup. So I do understand that. Like, they're coming in from a very low position, because I think the Chad or someone who's very successful with the women, he's not really learning that shit because he doesn't need it. The natural is never going to have to fucking like do all that research, because he's just a natural. He doesn't need all that crap. So I find that they're coming in from a low position. So maybe that did work for them, that they got like, you know, maybe a point or two above what they could have gotten. But yeah, I've yet to see one of these like pickup chads or like pickup guys like that get good girls, like very impressive girls, and I've met many of them. I've met many of them where a lot of them just spam approach, and it's quite embarrassing. You know, it's like, you know, you're at the club and you're at a table, and one's like at your table, but he runs out and talks to like 20 girls, gets rejected, and then like comes and sits back with you. That's embarrassing. Like, all that shit is low value, because like if you've got the club on lock or like the city on lock, you can come with 10 or 20 girls. You know, and you know that like they're not going to make you look bad. They're like good girls, attractive girls. That's the way that a table should be. You know, it should be like full of beautiful women. But you bring them from home. You know, and if the girl leaves your table, she's essentially banned from the table. She can never come back. If a girl's with you, like she's like, you know, at your table or whatever, she's just there to drink and have fun. But she's not there to like fucking just run around the club. That's low value behaviour. So yeah, that's just the way it goes. Like, if I'm bringing a bunch of girls to the club and one of them left the table, I would never fucking let it back. You know, it's one thing to go to the table, go to the bathroom or whatever, but like run around the club, that's embarrassing. Like, I'll fucking like, you're here with me, like you're fucking mine. You fucking stay there. So yeah, it's one thing. That's the way it goes. I think pickup in general is a very much nuked industry, because everything's online. Like, the guy who says a bunch of crap, there's going to be no success compared to the guy who just is that guy. It doesn't really matter what he says. He's just that dude. Like, when someone sends a resume in in their LinkedIn, shows that they're very qualified for the role, it doesn't really matter what they say. The guy goes straight to their history. Whereas like the guy who approaches and does all this crap, as soon as the girl checks his Instagram and checks who he knows and things like that, she knows if he's someone in the area or not. She knows like if people know him, know that he exists. So a lot of that shit, yeah, it's a dead industry unless the socializing and other elements are important. But yeah, all right, lads, I think that I have to fucking gym, and then I'm gonna smash through this cake. It's good, and I've got some fucking rice here. So yeah, it's good to have all this shit taken care of. All right, lads, until next time.